Hello and welcome to DCP number 105. We've got some lore on the table tonight. I don't know who's going to be talking about it because I'm not sure if anybody here is really a lore master. Maybe, possibly. I know Patrick's not, and he's not here.
Definitely not.
All right, guys.
Nope, right?
I'm going to talk. I'm a closet lore person. I'm going to talk to you guys about it tonight.
Of course.
This is a lie of the first order.
I've been hiding it for so long. It feels so good
magnitude.
to be able to share it with you. Let's talk about why your guardians have junk.
Majestic.
This is
junk.
right up there with I am not
Majestic.
a crook.
Yeah.
Since it's a pretty big whopper.
Also, to follow up, if guardians do have junk, would it then be considered space junk? Because we go to space?
It would be. And what's your light
magical
level of your junk?
Yeah. How much power level? What's your power level?
Then if you're on Earth,
junk?
is it terrestrial junk?
Yeah.
These are really
What is
good
the power level of your junk?
Yes.
This is already fantastic.
Life on the show. He could really shed some light on our junk.
Yeah. Please do.
I think you should consult your doctor for that. Just saying.
Hey, there.
The best idea.
You know who we have on the show this week? We have. My name is Bife. Well, you have Bife, but his name is.
Bife, whose
My name is not
is
Bife. It's Pope. But his name is My Name is Bife.
This has been.
Yes.
His name is. My name is Bife. Right.
Yeah,
I've
this is
always wanted a
really-
conversation to pan out just like this.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, you came to the right place. My name is Bife.
Can we just call you Bife, or would you like us to call you My Name is
Your
Bife?
full name.
Yes.
I think Bife, anything but Biff is good. Even James is good.
James,
but no Biff.
I
Anything
don't
but
know.
Biff.
You know,
When I get to my third beer, there may be a biff
Are
or two
you
coming.
are you just not a fan of Back to the Future?
Why
I'm
do you
just not a
hate-
fan of McFly because he's chicken. He's chicken McFly.
we're
I'm offended.
some serious.
For real,
I'm
for
actually
real.
offended.
We're scratching into something here.
Mhm.
Tell us how this makes you feel. Was the DeLorean really, the time traveling car that it
Was
was,
there
or is it
space
just a
junk
metaphor?
in the DeLorean?
I mean, you have to ask like future millionaire version of me to find out.
Ah,
Directions
yes.
unclear. Dick stuck in flux capacitor.
Wait, did I hear that right?
Yeah. What?
Yes.
No, you didn't. Yeah, we were moving on. Hey, Nick, this is Pope. Can you please edit that out? Thank you. Okay, so we are going to be talking to Bife about lore. And
Amazing.
if you
Well,
guys...
we're gonna just be listening to Bife talk about lore.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of us have, well, almost all of us, well, all of us on the podcast have played the campaign, and your Bungie is releasing the.
Is there
lore-
a short version of the story?
Yes, and I'm about to give it to you. I'm setting the stage. The point is that we're excited to have you on, Bife. Thank you for coming on.
Yes, thank
It's
you.
a pleasure to be on as always. Like
That's the
seriously,
short
glad
version.
to have the invitation.
How?
So
So I just want to know from your lore perspective, how has Forsaken exploded for you? Because I mean, there has been so much stuff that's been revealed, like just like a high level, 40,000 feet up. Like, how has all of that, the stuff, the knowledge that's been released with all of it, been just affecting you in the past month?
So I mean, overwhelming personally, but I mean, if we're going to talk about where the lore is generally, let's say like here is D1 vanilla and like here is Taken King, like Forsaken is somewhere up there. It's
Skyrocketed.
unbelievable. It's
why
absolutely
is that? Why is it? Is it just more of it available to us, or is the quality of it? Is it quantity or quality or both?
Is it because
It's both.
Shax and Mara? Is that why?
Oh,
You're really into Mara, aren't you? Tell us
Absolutely.
about it.
I'm jealous.
I mean, Mara is Bay. As simple as that. Actually, this is a thing. There's a piece of like, Sunny in Philadelphia, the guy pointing at all the red like string at that meme. Someone made a version of that with me, and quite appropriately, one of the things that he wrote on one of the sheets at the back was Mara self is Bay. That's the only thing I'm gonna say on that front. I will not challenge Keith if you're watching this. Anyway,
So-
so for real, like regarding the way that laws happened, like it was always a community that existed. But at this moment in time, there's 3 reasons why it's really been so good. The first, of course, is just like we got another huge dump of lore.
Mhm.
Like tons of different storylines got expanded on, including storylines that I wasn't expecting to get expanded on whatsoever. And particularly, like knowing nothing about it going into it, seeing the way that the Drifter plays into the, well, I say plays into, most likely plays into the Last Word and Thorn story, that was the best surprise of it all, I think. But there's so much on here. I mean, the Ahamkara, finally we have the origins of the Awoken. We have so much more going on behind the scenes with Aldrin and what's happened to him in between, well, last we saw him at TTK and
Mhm.
like the beginning of Forsaken. And then there's the second thing, which is finally we have like a structural place of putting it in game. And I mean, like we always had the lore tabs, right? But now we have actual books. We have stuff that is relevant to the current expansion, and the better part of it is it's a true set of collectibles.
Hmm.
Like this is something that people are hunting week on week. There's a race to get to it. It's fantastic. And finally, I just say that it's down to the quality of the writing. I mean, if anybody has been hunting the Ahamkara bones, it's one of these really amazing stories that's told throughout that, which is overall called the Mara Senna. And the Mara Senna is literally the story of how Mara Sov came to be, how she became an Awoken, how the Awoken became a people in the first place. And it contains some of the most beautiful writing I've ever seen. It, you know, Books of Sorrows is fantastic. Mara Senna, I'd say, is even a cut above that. And considering that Books of Sorrows is the thing that everyone like looks to as like the creme de la creme of Destiny lore, like that's saying something. I've never cried reading through Grimoire or reading through any of Destiny's lore until one point in the Mara Senna. It's just some of the most beautiful writing.
Wow.
That's about how she became
wanna
awoken,
know.
or how she, like, how everybody became awoken, or how they became
So,
awoken.
The two are intertwined, basically. So Mara, this will be like spoilers for anybody who hasn't read ahead, and I want to go ahead and say that right now. If you want to read this for yourself, go ahead and do that now. Just find it in game. If you really want to get to all of it, go to Ishtar Collective. But this is going to be like all of the lore. So if you want to stay spoiler free, like leave now.
Yeah, this isn't going to be your podcast. If you
This
want
is
to.
This is not the podcast.
I don't want to know about all the lore. I want to discover it. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
this is,
bad
I don't want to be in
podcast.
this. This is not this one. This
Skip
might be the
ahead
wrong one.
2 hours and you'll get to the Twitter questions.
Eventually, we'll start talking about dicks.
Yeah. Space
Yeah.
dicks.
Again,
Yeah, we already started that at the beginning. So
Consult
it
your
wraps
doctor.
around.
Oh Lord.
does it wrap around or wrap over? I mean,
There's an obvious reach around joke.
Fryer didn't even realize
Come
what he
on.
said.
No.
Now he's even
I
more
didn't get
excited.
the reach around joke. I'm sorry. Life did though.
Okay.
So
So
these
Marasov,
quickly,
Marasov.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah.
Awoken.
To answer your question,
Yeah.
Briar. Yeah. So basically, the entire moment where the Awoken are born is wrapped up very much with Mara Sov. To really simplify it, they were on one of the colony ships that was escaping from Earth at the time being, a ship called Exodus Green, although it does go by another name because multiple names, ships, okay, same thing. Point being, there is a moment where the darkness and the light are clashing, and this is literally in the midst of the collapse. And the
She,
captain,
at this point, I'm sorry to interrupt. At this point, she
No,
was
go for
not a queen. She was a
she
worker
wasn't
bee?
even an Awoken. She was just a human.
right. She
Okay.
was
Everyone
like
on
kind
this
of
colony ship
a
is
worker on the ship that.
Like a citizen.
Yeah, basically. So this is actually a really good point to talk about that. They were carrying 40,000 passengers within cryopods behind them, and the core crew of the ship was made up of 900 individuals, captained by someone called Alice Lee, right? Or actually, that's her name when she becomes an Awoken. Slight spoilers. But yeah, basically, moving forward...
wait, by
collapse happens.
so at the Cosmodrome in D1, we see one of the major set pieces is a colony ship. Is this an example of one of the colony ships that didn't make it out of orbit, but what would have been what Marasov was on?
Yes, indeed.
Right.
So the colony ships we know of, just like that, not just Exodus Green now, which was apparently what Mara was on, but also there's Exodus Black,
Yep.
which of course is where Failsafe is. It's crashed down on Nessus. We've also got Exodus Blue, which was of course the great PvP map that we had from all the way back in D1. If some of you guys remember the OGs, then yeah, that's going to be a fond memory. And then we've got Exodus Red, which has its own Grimoire card, and I tentatively, I want to say it's the one where you go up in the second mission of TTK and find Cade's stash, but I don't want to go ahead and put my mouth on that one because it's just like I'm not 100% on that. It simply was a ship that never launched, but they do look exactly like that. You're thinking of the correct kind of ship. Now, yeah. Oh, go for it.
No, it's amazing because we start seeing like that. We see back in the Cosmodrome, you see the fuel line in one of the episodes, one of the missions. You see the fuel line that was feeding the colony ship has exploded, and they never got the fuel to take off. And when you go into it in one of the missions, you can see that there's some scannable items, some lore in there that kind of gives you an idea of who was in it. And they reference, it's really interesting. I want to hear more about how she.
We need to continue with Mara.
We are on a track that we want to
Yeah,
go.
we need to go.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. I want to find out about Marasov and how she becomes an Awoken.
That's what we're doing.
Let's hear that.
Look, I'm taking notes here, so you just back off.
Respect the man's knowledge. But yeah, so extra screen, just flying out there in space, basically heading to whatever a destination is. Mara, at this point, she's literally just a worker amongst those 900 crew members. She's kind of special in this sense because what she'll literally do is go out into the vacuum of space, and she captures her experience using a Golden Age device, and by that device, she's literally able to share that experience. And it's kind of something that gives her a little bit of notoriety.
She's a
and
vlogger
reputation amongst the crew. She's not a vlogger because
a Golden
this is
Age
literally
vlog?
the physical experience. It's it's literally the physical experience as well.
Interesting.
So it's like it's way more immersive than that. And it makes her popular with the crew. She's also an engineer and she fixes things, and she just quite happily jumps in and fixes things when people don't necessarily ask. And as a result, it's all sorts of stuff like people come and bring her gifts, and she becomes really popular with the crew to the point where she almost thinks like, I say she almost thinks there's this kind of interesting power dynamic between her and the actual ship's captain, because she recognizes that Mara has become this kind of like, not leading figure per se, but a figure where people put a bit of hope in her. And this is the point then that the darkness really comes into play, because of course the collapse happens around this time. And it's not totally clear from the events because the ship is surrounded by darkness. But what is clear is that there is this momentary pulse of light that Mara is able to see. And this is just after Alice Lee, the captain of the ship, has sent a message to the darkness that's attacking them and basically says, "We wish to be treated as a neutral party. You may continue to Earth. We have no stake in it anymore." And so it breeds this really interesting idea of, did the darkness listen to them? Because, again, the Awoken are built of dark and light. They're this kind of interesting balancing factor to the universe. And whatever happens, again, like that particular moment in time is one that I think people can speculate and theorize about for quite some time. But whatever happens, the Awoken end up being pulled into a singularity. I say the Awoken. At the time being, they're still very much human. But
Sorry, would that indicate that the darkness is like a sentient being?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so it's not just a collective of all the bad shit that's happened,
scattered bad vibes.
It's sentient.
Yeah, it's like it's actually sentient in some sense. At least that's what the Books of Sorrow seem to indicate. And also this particular moment, if you buy that theory that they were listened to by the darkness, that's what it indicates. But I mean, there is also literally a moment where Oryx is spoken to by some unnamed character after venturing into the deep, which is the Hive's way of saying the darkness. So yeah, like there's a lot of evidence that pushes it that way. So keep that in mind. It's maybe not the exact thing, but yeah, evidence seems to suggest that. Either way, the Awoken reach towards the singularity, and Mara is actually outside of the ship. Her brother, Aldrin, is following her at this moment in time. And because Mara sees where everything is headed towards this singularity, there's this one absolutely beautiful line. And Watts, I think you were asking about this a little bit earlier, but this was the line that ended up making me cry. And it was something along the lines of, Mara reaches towards infinity, towards destiny. She wants to be the first. And it's just this beautiful moment where, all of her life is falling apart behind her. So yeah, this is actually it. I happened to pull up the notes at the perfect point. By the way, if you're looking to read along from this is in the Cosmogaia set of cards, Cosmogaia 4. And the line is, gravity seizes her. She falls forward in space and time, into the future, into the mystery. Yang Li Wei is behind her. Yang Li Wei, by the way, is the name of the ship, alternatively X to screen. Aldwin is behind her. Aldrin, Aldwin. They have slightly different names between being human and being awoken. So Aldwin is Aldrin, still her brother. And yeah, she wants to be first. It's just this most beautiful line, considering all the context prior to this. And yeah, that's basically how it all starts. When they awaken inside the singularity, all of them are now awoken. They're light and dark. And
There's hijinks there too, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. Would you expand on that, I guess?
With her, like, she may have been the first to awaken. She may not have. Like, she wanted to trick everybody into her thinking she wasn't the first to awaken.
So this is actually like, again, if you have not read Morrison, you want to say on spoil, this is absolutely the point at which you leave. But yes, to explain it, supposedly the first awoken to actually wake up, this is according to their common legend, was Alice Lee, who happened to be the captain of the ship that they were flying, captain on extra screen. Thing is, that's just their original perception of it. And Mara actually tells Alice Lee about this, and she also tells Sieur Ido, who is another key figure that you'll read about in the Mara Senna, and she actually says that no, Mara was the first awoken, after all. She did want to be first. She did reach towards the future and towards her destiny. She was probably the first one to reach it. Mara designed the entire system by which the awoken history occurred. She designed everything, including all the bad events that happened throughout the Mara Senna, specifically so that things can play out according to her plan. And as a result, everyone is completely ignorant to this idea that she was the first. As far as everyone else is publicly concerned, Mara Self was the second awoken ever to be woken up. She was woken by Alice Lee. But all of this is part of her design, which is what's even more mind-boggling. It just paints this really amazing picture of Mara. And generally, you'll see this thread with her story about, like, she'll make a lot of really interesting choices that will sacrifice lives and might seem immoral, but behind all of it, she has this goal and this plan, and you start to question what her kind of allegiance really ends up being, whether it's to her people or whether she's maybe fighting for the people back on Earth. And yeah, the whole thing just becomes this really interesting dynamic throughout her entire time. It's a wonderful story.
Wow.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
Mara's one of the characters that we unpack with this. But
just real quick, the singularity, is that the singularity that we see in the Dreaming City? The same one?
I don't believe it's the same.
No?
I don't believe it's the same one.
So, okay.
That, again, is something
Just
I would
happens
need
to be different, yeah.
further into. If you want to find out a bit more, though, this is a real big plug. Pilgrimage patrols. If you go to the Dreaming City and you have the normal ghost scan patrols, you actually meet with Shurochi, and she offers to tell you more about the city. So their pilgrimage patrols are literally just ghost scans as you would normally do, but instead of just finding a random doodad in the world, you're finding a part of the Dreaming City, and Shurochi gives you story context. And I know she actually gives a lot of context about what the quote-unquote singularity is when you go and see those. But to give a really Spark Notes-ish version, the Dreaming City is one of many awoken places that they have built as kind of like hidden areas almost.
Okay.
It's kind of like how we access it through the Watchtower in the first place. It's really hard to describe, but this is all separate from the singularity that the awoken originally jump into. The singularity they originally jump into is known as the Distributary. And there's like a whole bunch of lore as to why they call it that and how it's separate, and the Distributary is, according to their beliefs, it's a gift from, I think if I'm remembering Mara Senna correctly, it's a gift from darkness and light, and it's just, yeah, the entire thing is, it has its own foundational world building to it, and they set this all up in the Mara Senna.
Wow.
So all the Awoken originated from that event.
Yes.
They're immortal as far as we know?
They're immortal within the, they were immortal but not invincible.
Right.
But this only extends when inside the singularity, if I'm not
mistaken. Okay. So they age when they're outside of it?
Yeah. So it's one of these things of Mara offers the Awoken at a certain point this choice to return back to Earth and, well, Earth, the system generally. And at that moment, she also says, we will accept pain, we'll be going on this journey and it will be hard. We will be giving up our immortality, but, this is the next step on our journey. And a load of people join her at that, and that's where the Awoken really start to split. And so you have a bunch of Awoken that stay within the distributory, that singularity. And you have this whole other group that Mara splits off with, and they go back into our system. And that's where all the Awoken we've seen today come from. And then, when the Awoken have already been split like this, they then split again, because with Mara's group, you have what we would better know as the Earthborn Awoken, or just Awoken generally, and the Reefborn Awoken. And that is another kind of thing that's expanded on in the Awoken of the Reef cards, which then continues on after the Mara Senna where it left off. And so you get them separating because some of them believe they need to go back and help Earth, and Mara encourages a lot of them to stay because her entire emphasis of this is purely that, no, we came here, we need to establish ourselves first, we need to make sure that we're strong. And eventually she just lets them part. So yeah, it's like a whole load of different moments of exodus in their story, even from when before they were an Awoken. But it really hasn't.
Following the timeline, right? This all happened after the Golden Age. How can there be an Awoken that wakes up in the Cosmodrome in like those cars, right? Like if you chose a character of the Awoken in Destiny 1, like how does that work with the lore that we know now?
So when there was that secondary split, what would have happened? Let's say your Guardian is an Awoken. That second split occurs between the Reefborn Awoken and the ones that say we want to go to Earth. You're amongst those ones that want to go to Earth, and you leave. You do good deeds, but you find yourself in the Cosmodrome. That's kind of the general theory. And, it's not one of those things of, I suppose, you'd find yourself in a calm, or that you'd find yourself in that area.
In that area.
Again,
So
it's hard to sort of jumble it all together when
Guardians weren't necessarily dead before the Golden Age then, or before the the Traveler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like the term that I think was used way back when was that they were they were amongst the long dead, but I think at certain points in time that sort of shifted over to the worthy dead. So it's kind of this moment of are you capable of wielding the light because of X, Y, and Z? Kind of undefined categories. But again, you can become a Guardian, therefore, even if you're an Awoken. And if you are an Awoken Guardian, your death is at least somewhat contemporary, I wouldn't say it's ancient, but it is, yeah.
There aren't a lot of Guardians that know who they were before, in their past life, right? Mm-hmm. Do we know what, the oldest one who does know is?
As in the oldest Guardian?
Is there, a samurai from the 1500s, does it go back that far, or is it more modern than that?
I think the problem with getting an ancient samurai from the 1500s is that they need to actually have a record of who they were when they wake up, right? So that's your big challenge. So let's take Anna Bray, for example. She had her badge, her lab coat. She could see that she was in Clovis Bray uniform, and she can basically piece things together and be like, okay, I was Anna Bray in my past life.
So she doesn't remember, she put it together based on evidence.
Precisely.
Okay.
The only individuals who are Guardians that have any kind of chance of remembering their previous lives are Exos. And this is actually something that expanded a lot on in Cade 6's story. He gets these little flashbacks of a life that he might have had in his past. And so you get these little kind of glimmers of moments. For him, it's often glimmers of a wife and a child, and he's not totally sure about whether they're true or not. He doesn't know whether his queen and Ace, as he puts it, were a memory that was fabricated, or whether it was someone that he knew before he was an Exo, or whether it was someone he knew during his time as an Exo. And that's something that really bugs him. But that's the closest the Guardians get.
Ace is his son or kid?
There's evidence that he made Ace up to comfort himself.
Right? That's one of the things that he thinks about during during the Man Called Cade book, is he contemplates whether Ace was real or not, whether his queen was real or not. And in the end, he decides that it doesn't really matter as much, because ultimately they were things that allowed him to remain good. They were kind of anchor points for him. And that's kind of his justification for saying, even if these things were fake, it doesn't matter because it kept me from straying to a bad path. And so, yeah, Guardians don't generally remember a lot. That's just worth leaving out there.
Can we talk a little bit about Aldrin? And so his journey through. Explain this. Can we start off by explaining maybe like the story element of this? Like he gets tricked essentially into thinking that he's doing something good. Can you explain like his what happened in the story with Aldrin?
And also, what the hell is the Chimera?
I tried explaining for the most part, but if you look at the original name, a chimera is a generalist term nowadays, but back in the day it used to be an animal that is built of 3 animals and different parts of them. So I believe it was goat, lion, and snake was the original chimera. Chimera is a very generalist term now, saying it's just an animal that's kind of a mishmash of other animals generally. So if you're looking at the literal idea of it being a chimera, it makes some sense that it's something that's been sort of smashed together with a servitor and other parts. Thing is, we can definitely tell from not just the shell, but also the way that it's been described in a bunch of the twabs and references to it generally. It's been described as a server, a taken ascendant servitor, which is interesting to say the very least. I don't think I can give the best answer about it aside from that, because realistically there just isn't a lot on what a chimera is. Even if you look through the Drifters cards, which is where you will predominantly get the reference to anything to do with primevals, for example, there's not much there. As for Aldrin's story, if you're going to look purely at what happens in the campaign, the most obvious line for it is that he's been completely manipulated by Riven. Because, of course, Riven's entire agenda is to fulfill desires. And Aldrin's entire MO at this moment in time is literally just he wants his sister back. Him and his sister have one of the deepest connections of any 2 characters in Destiny's lore. And so if you're going through the entire story, you base everything that Aldrin does off of that. And in that sense, he becomes a bit of a sympathetic character. But of course, this is all just Riven deceiving him. And in the process of deceiving him, eventually you get to that scene where he is devoured by the Chimera, which, of course, at that moment is called the quote-unquote voice of Riven, which sort of pushes it back to being like one of her taken, more specifically an appendage of Riven. If you're also going to look at everything prior to this, I really want to encourage people to read through the Forsaken Prince book, because that basically has a lot of Aldrin's story within it, and it's just a fantastic read. It talks about the foundation of the Scorn, it talks about all of the different moments where Fickrul, for example, was pulled into the picture. Fickrul as in the Fanatic, who is another really foundational character in all this. And if you're really going to go to the most important part of all that, I think you should probably look to some of the later cards, which is the point at which Aldrin gets found and is returning to the reef, and then eventually Petra, after he says that he's hearing voices, decides that he needs to be put into the Prison of Elders, which is a really foundational moment, because hearing voices in the first place, I mean, under most circumstances, that would indicate, someone who's not completely right of mind. But in this particular instance, with the particular set of circumstances, if Petra knew, and I'm not 100% on this, if Petra knew that Riven had been taken, then she might have had an idea of the fact that, Aldrin's in trouble, he's being manipulated.
Can we find out more about Riven as well? Because, Riven is such an interesting part of the story, like the Wall of Wishes and how that became a thing. And Armkara in general, how did Riven become taken? All of that.
Okay.
I want all the answers.
All of it.
The one thing I don't think I'm super clear on with regards to is the Wall of Wishes itself. It's referred to a few times within just the general apocrypha around it. I believe I'm going to need to double check this, but I think it's actually in the Mara and Shaxx lore tab that's on the Titan mark. So I'll need to double check that. But I think she throws
Mara
knives at the
Shaxx?
wishing wall. Oh, do you not know this, Pope?
He kept his helmet on.
Oh my.
He kept his helmet on?
Yeah, he kept his helmet on the whole time.
He kept his helmet.
The helmet did not come off.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they
Gotta stay safe,
Safety first.
They had a relationship?
I would hesitate to call it a relationship. The
one night stand?
Probably, yeah. That's what's indicated at the very least.
Interesting.
I don't think there was some extra transmatting going on.
This is amazing. Right.
I'm just literally thinking of Shaq.
Two down.
screaming at the top of his lungs.
Two down.
No,
Fight
it's-
forever, God.
So yeah, that's a thing. But as far as the wishing wall is concerned, that's the one thing that I'm really not clear on. I'm not 100% sure if that actually pulls into the lore itself. I'd need to read through again. As for the Ahamkara and Riven generally, the really interesting thing is that the Awoken themselves have a lot of legends about Ahamkara and them being discovered. But then even before that, there's references in the Grimoire that supposedly make an indication that the Ahamkara were around during the Golden Age. And it's not 100% clear because, again, the Grimoire is often kind of like this, legendary kind of like back-end stuff that might not be too reliable. It's kind of fictitious at certain points. It's like, this may or may not have been the case. So it's not 100% clear. What is clear, however, is that while the Dreaming City was being established, while the Awoken of the Reef were building their areas, they did find Ahamkara, and they found a bunch of them. They found a whole lot of them, and they kind of lived side by side with each other as a result. So you have references in the Dreaming City to all sorts of Ahamkara, some of which we know of, some of which we don't know of. You have the two skulls down in the Harbinger's Seclude, Hugin and Munin, so the ones you can trade with. Ao is also referenced in one of the pilgrimage patrols, I believe. You've got a Ahamkara with a really interesting story called Azarim, who leads a bunch of Awoken to their deaths. You can actually find it's in the Dreaming City lore book generally. Azarim has their own story card, and it's a wonderful little story in itself. The reason that they're significant in any sense is that there's like the tiniest like hint from one of the pilgrimage patrols that Azarim might still be alive, but that's it. Like, for all we know, that's just like everything that it is. It could just be legend. So really need to put that out there. Something else to note is just Riven's discovery generally. Riven is the Ahamkara that is of particular importance, of course, because it's the last Ahamkara that we know of, and it's also the one that Mara makes a pact with.
What was the pact?
Yeah, what's up with that?
Just a generalist pact, Like, if I'm going to go ahead and actually find the Riven one, it's going to say words to the effect of, like, they basically had an understanding, they had a relationship, they worked really well together. And the reason behind that is kind of to do with how Ahamkara exist. Like, has anyone ever heard of the term Wish Dragon whenever thinking or talking about Ahamkara?
Yes.
I've heard it, yes.
So, yeah, Wish Dragon is... I mean... Either way, like, Wish Dragon is just like a really specific but also a really appropriate term for an Ahamkara, because their ability to sense desires is what makes them special. Like, you don't have to go up to them like a genie with a lamp and be like, give me 3 wishes. One of those wishes is I wish for 1,000,000 wishes. No, like, they will literally sense your desire. So, in the case of Mara Sol, she has...
Sorry to interrupt. This is true with all Ahamkara, or specifically Riven has this ability?
All Ahamkara.
Okay.
All Ahamkara. As far as we know, at very least. Like, enough so that the Awoken built parts of their city specifically with amethyst because it causes a reflection. This is actually another interesting point. The reflection is important because the reflection helps to counteract, as they put it, wish magic, because wish magic is very much based on perception and expectation. And if you have a mirror and a reflective surface, it somewhat counters that. This is all in the wonderful pilgrimage patrols, by the way, again. You'll find that.
So if you're surrounded by amethyst and the wish dragons can't enter your mind, it's like tinfoil hat kind of stuff.
I don't know about can't enter their mind, but it's just a thing of there is at least some kind of defense.
Can't use the desires against you.
Okay.
Maybe not as effectively. I don't want to put a degree on it, so to speak.
Sure.
But enough to the case that the Awoken built a lot of it. Like, there's a platform by which the Ahamkara land, and the amethyst there, which is again down in Harbinger's Seclude, I think. It's specifically placed just for that reason. As for Riven and Mara, however, theirs is a really interesting pact because Mara is actually so patient, and she is queen of her people at this moment in time. She's in fact been kind of announced and elected queen, if I'm not mistaken. Or at very least in name, she's sort of spoken amongst her people as the queen. I think her election is actually kind of after this point. But yeah, she has practically speaking, not many desires whatsoever. No huge ones to the point of Aldrin, for example, being like, I want my sister back. And so in this instance, if you read the Riven card, she actually talks about the fact that this is an advantage for Mara in the sense that she gets her friendship with Riven. Riven is able to sort of like sit there and just exist, whilst feeding desires and granting wishes is something that literally sustains an Ahamkara. Mara is described by Riven as kind of like a giant flat plain, so to speak, where you can bask in the sun. And so it's one of these things of like, as a result, the two of them are able to have an uncompromised sort of alliance, friendship, call it what you will. And it even gets to the point where Mara and Riven actually build Mara's throne world together. And that's just an indication of how crazy and powerful
Hooks up
both
with
Riven is.
she hooks up with the Riven too, huh? Doesn't she? She's got Shax. She's got Riven. I mean, we're finding out a lot about Mara right now.
Just checking it all off the list.
You kink shaming her right now?
I'm just saying.
Have you seen that mouth?
Maybe Riven shapeshifted into Shax and kept his helmet on.
This is actually another really cool point, by the way.
Yeah, I wanted
They
to
can
ask you.
shapeshift.
The two skulls we see down below are relatively small, right? I mean, what does a Ahamkara look like?
So this is the kind of the key point, right? So there's two sets of bones that we commonly see. There's the small ones that you pick up, and then there's like the larger skulls that you see there. There's also a few others which I guess could be seen as Ahamkara, but it's not really confirmable, but they're like massive vertebrae and whatnot. So again, take that all with a pinch of salt. What I would simply say, most importantly of all, is that Ahamkara can shapeshift. And you see this a lot in the raid armor. If you read through it all, it's actually called like so-and-so of the Great Hunt, like Robe of the Great Hunt, Mark of the Great Hunt. And it hails back to this one big event in Guardian history when the Ahamkara were hunted to near extinction. And so in all of these different like lore tabs, they're talking about different moments on the hunt. And in some instances, they're appearing as you'd expect. So for example, Lord Saladin wishes to fight a fire-breathing dragon just like the knights of old. And lo and behold, him and the Iron Lords do just that, because that's what was wished for. However, when it comes to someone like, say, Takeo 3, and more specifically, her partner in crime at the time being, who was the person who made the Pocket Infinity? This is going to get to me. Galida Toyet. So Galida Toyet wishes to know more about
How
the
could you
facts.
forget that name?
I know,
Rolls right off the tongue.
Oh, Galita.
But yeah,
Good old
Galida wishes
Galida.
to know more about the Vex, and so one of the Ahamkara literally appears to her as a non-hostile Vex Hydra, and she takes sketches of that Hydra. And after the sketches are done, then Takeo 3 is allowed to go ahead and shoot the thing with a rocket launcher, and then kill it. And so, you know, the Ahamkara can literally shapeshift into whatever you are thinking of and imagining at the time being. Look again at Tyranny in Heaven, which is the bow from the raid. And then it talks about the Vanguard commander who was prior to Andal Brask, so 2 before Cade, basically. And it talks about her, Tallulah Fairwind, and it talks about how she loses a game of cards to an Ahamkara who is currently disguised as an old woman. And so, again, you can literally have an Ahamkara morph into anything within reason, I think.
And why are we killing
Yeah.
the Ahamkar?
Like that's my
Wait a minute.
question is like, why?
Could an Ahamkara change into a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man?
No.
Good question.
If you
Off
wished
limits.
it so, I think.
If you
Was
wished
Zol an Ahamkara?
We need to know if there is a crossover.
But what was the purpose with like
Of killing
bring him to extinction? Like, I mean, they were granting wishes. Was there some sort of bad side effect? What, like, obviously Riven was taken, so the bad things was going on with like the wishing and all that. But like outside of that, what was the purpose for killing him?
So Riven is actually a completely separate case on this one instance, because again, nothing got taken before X came to the system. As for all the other Ahamkara, yes, they granted wishes, but the wishes were always granted in kind of a raw deal type way, and it was judged as being too dangerous by the tower. At least that's what the Great Hunt Grimoire Guard talks about
Rumpelstiltskin.
back in Destiny 1. So let's give you a really interesting example, which is from the Warlock Bond from the Great Hunt, which actually talks about our good old buddy Pradith. Does anyone remember Pradith from the Vault of Glass?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Forget him.
So the story in that one talks about him, Kabir, and Pahanin hunting a bunch of Ahamkara, and Pradith wishes hard in his mind because he loves the thrill of the hunt so much. He says, I wish the hunt would never end. And he then has a moment where he swears that an Ahamkara winked at him. And it's this moment of like, okay, whatever, I'll just continue going on to the hunt. But lo and behold, Pradith then gets trapped in the Vault of Glass and is trapped forever, you know? And so it's one of these things of like, well, maybe the hunt never ends and maybe he's hunted there and
That's fucked.
eternity. And so it's, you know, like you get the idea of
Nasty
how
Amkaras.
yeah, you get the kind of idea of how the wishes can be kind of raw deals, but generally that power is judged by the tower as being too much, and so they're hunted to extinction. So
That's
yeah,
kinda-
wishes are dangerous.
It's kind of sad though, because they're not necessarily bad, but they're not
Oh, yeah.
necessarily good either. It's just they're granting your wish. But it is like you said, it's exactly as you describe it. So you have to be very specific in your wish,
Yeah.
otherwise.
And also,
who knows
like,
what will happen.
it's not even just about being specific, but it's also, you got to remember, it's not like walking up and asking, because this is what's really ingenious about it. It is genuinely your deep-seated desires within your mind, you know? It's entirely based upon that. So
Are the Ahamkara doing it on purpose, or is it just like a byproduct of like what they are?
They're like,
Does it just
"Damn
like happen because
Yeah.
they're around?
Oh, I did it again.
sustenance is gained from granting wishes, I believe. So that's kind of
So
like
they
the
feed
general
on it.
idea. Yeah, like I didn't know if the feeding is like a most literal feeding, but again, that's the reasoning at least behind why they do it. Is it's some kind of sustenance to them.
Do we know their original form?
If we're gonna go ahead and look at Riven, maybe that's her original form, but it's really skeptical for anyone to kind of judge. Because again, for starters, like what is the true form of a shapeshifter is a really hard question to answer. But also, look at the bones, and then they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. The only thing I think that we can kind of relatively definitively say is that when you look at their jaw structure, two lower separated mandibles, and then a single upper side to the jaw. And that's the only consistent thing you can find across all the bones, even across Riven.
Oh, interesting.
Predator
That's-
crossover.
What's the relationship between the Ahamkara and the worms from?
So
Like the
this one is a really interesting question, because when the Ahamkara and the Worm Gods talk, they always use a very similar kind of structure to their sentences. It always goes, "Oh, noun mine," so "Oh, general ours," "Oh, wisher mine," "Oh, bearer mine," "Oh, murderer mine," and it's all this kind of like stuff that's fitted in this certain way. And only Worm Gods and Ahamkara do this. In an interesting sense as well, the Worm Gods kind of answer the wishes that are made by the siblings of, well, to use their final names, Oryx, Savathun, and Shivurath. So there's like a ton of different hints throughout Destiny's lore that there is some kind of relationship between the Worm Gods and the Ahamkara. Originally, back in the day, I was bold enough to state they were the same species, and I kind of still think that, but again, nothing is really sort of proven. And even if you look at a worm god and compare it to Riven, say literally grab Zol, put it next to Riven, they look very, very different. So, like there's a lot of good questions about that, and the exact nuance of what it is hasn't really been discovered or uncovered. It's all this stuff about the fact the two are very much related, really close in some way, but there is no clear, definitive answer as to what they are. Are they just something that has managed to learn similar powers of the Ahamkara? Are they corrupted Ahamkara? Are they a slightly different genus? There's a whole load of different possibilities, and we're just not sure of it right now.
Do we know what role the Ahamkara and the Worm Gods play with what's going to be happening with the darkness coming, the 3D Dorito chips?
The tetrahedrons.
The tetrahedrons.
That's
It's a different word.
So with the Worm Gods at very least, I think that they are kind of like, again, this is all theory, but they are very much close to the darkness. With regards to Ahamkara, I don't know if any more exist. Like, let's assume for a second that Riven was the last Ahamkara, and if we did kill Riven, then the Ahamkara are completely out of the picture, even if they are just still able to communicate with us through bones and dust and whatnot. Their power is very much finite in that sense. What I would say is that if you're looking for a big figure that is probably going to influence it. My personal bet would be on Yule, who is the worm god who's called the Honest Worm. And it's that way because Yule is the one that originally proposed the contract to the sort of three siblings on behalf of all the worm gods. And so, as kind of a speaker, it sort of pushes this idea that Yule is slightly more powerful. And then there's all this stuff about how Yule tried to devour Zol because Zol was weaker. So maybe there's a little bit of an indication that they're slightly more important. But as far as everything else is concerned, all I would simply say is that the worm gods are powerful. And if there's stuff to do with the hive, you will almost undoubtedly hear something about them, whether that's of any huge story significance or not. I'm not going to second guess what Bungie's doing. I trust the writers at this point. They can probably go really good.
Is there anything in there about the origins of the Ahamkara, why they showed up? You know, if they showed up during the Golden Age, like where did they come from? Were they always here? Did we just not know?
Well, again, that's part of the mystery to them, right? Like, there's that stuff in the Grimoire that says, like, well, hey, I mean, they kind of turned up in the Golden Age, but at the same time, the Grimoire is suspect in that sense because it's never been, like, definitive. But then if you look to the Awoken, there's all this stuff about how the Awoken found them after the collapse. And then even further back than that, if you look to the Books of Sorrows, which is literally way, way, way before humanity has discovered the Traveler, you then see all these lines about how the wish dragons, as it's put, are discovered around a system that the Hive are destroying, and they're supporting a race called the Harmony. I say supporting. The Harmony at very least are harboring them, and the dragons are doing their thing and granting wishes. And there's even this really interesting phrase put out by Shiva Arath, and she says, "Our gods are ours alone. I would shut them all in cells." And so the origins of the Ahamkara seem to be, according to the Books of Sorrows, way back, but it's not entirely clear. There is no single origin point that's been given to them. It's not
So
clear.
if they were messing around with the Harmony, like way back when, then they are not from our solar system.
Yes, that's what it would seem to indicate.
Okay.
Interesting.
So if there's a power or entity, like if you were to layer them, it seems like the Awoken or the fallen humans are sort of this base layer, and then above that you have I feel like you have like these gods, or like the worm gods and the Ahamkara, but there seems to be another layer above that we're talking about between the influences of the light and the dark, and how the agents of that. Where would you put the Traveler in that? As the same category as the Ahamkara and the worm gods, but influenced by the light instead of the darkness? How do they fit in this hierarchy of characters in Destiny?
So I want to say that I do not have like a definitive answer to that, because that's still kind of like one of the endgame mysteries of it. The Traveler is most commonly stated to be the light, right? So if I was going to place it anywhere, I'd put it up against being the enemy of the tetrahedrons, them being the darkness. This is actually this is something that Zach Witten from St. Jude discussed with me at some point. He blew my mind with this, so buckle up. I think that entire idea of the darkness being the tetrahedrons and the Traveler being the light makes the most sense. And the reason being is because if you look at the two different ideologies they fight for, on the Traveler, it's like this idea of more life, more complexity. Everything from that is what we derive our strength from. With the darkness, it's about more simplicity, more ferocity, boiling things down to, as they put it, their true final shape, the sword logic. Take geometry. The most simple three-dimensional shape is a tetrahedron because it has only 4 sides. The most complex is a sphere because the sides are built up in a huge calculus, right? And so it has this really interesting idea. The darkness is all about simplicity, aka tetrahedron, aka 4 sides. The light is all about complexity, aka many, 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 many sides, and a sphere. You know, so if you're going to go ahead and say that anything is on some kind of level, I would put the Traveler as a parallel to these pyramid ships. Whether that is a pure kind of representation of light or dark is still very much up for discussion. But I would definitely put the two kind of like on level with each other.
I was hoping you were going to bring that up. I saw that exchange between you guys on Twitter, and I was like thinking that the way that the conversation blowed out from there really got me thinking about how these characters are intertwined and the general, like, who's pulling the strings behind all of this, right? And I know that that's what we're eventually going to, the big grand
Hopefully
mystery
find out,
is,
right?
yes, is hopefully we're going to get to a point where we find out who's pulling the strings. But it's really interesting to see how these players are kind of getting introduced to us and the story is unfolding.
Yeah. And I mean, like, as far as like the light and the dark, there are so many different ideas and theories behind even that. If you look all the way back at the original Darkness Grimoire card, which has a whole bunch of different conflicting theories, you know, there's no single agreed definition for what the darkness and light end up being. I mean, if you go ahead and take a look at Saint 14, he's just like, this is a literal physical army that we need to just go out there and fight and punch. Whereas if you look at someone like, say, Ulan Tan, he's saying, no, the darkness and light are representative of kind of a yin and the yang, and we need to balance the universe, and we need to do that by healing the traveler. And so, yeah, like, the entire thing is poorly understood even by the denizens of Destiny's universe, but I think that's what makes it really interesting, is there's a lot of room to sort of maneuver and think about what ends up being the case. Personally, I love the idea that Ulan Tan is correct. It makes a lot of sense with the ending of Destiny 2, where that beam of light suddenly hits those pyramid ships and then they wake up. Because it's kind of like the Traveler was dead before, the Traveler is awakened again, all of a sudden the darkness is awakened again. Symmetry, yin and a yang, back at it. But again, nothing is proven thus far. We'd need something more definitive story-wise on the darkness and the light to really get that.
Well, we see that example in nature here on Earth, right? The growth, the cycles of the seasons, growth and death, and there has to be that balance of nature, and you're seeing it played out in the story of Destiny, and it just
in space magic.
Space magic, and I just like shooting my guns, man.
Can we talk about the Dreaming City and this whole like curse cycle and what the hell is going on with that? Like, I've heard rumors about it feeding Savathun and, you know, the last wish being a curse from Riven and all this stuff. Like, can you tie that together somehow?
Yeah, like, what is the curse, right? Is that Riven's last wish? Like, what?
Riven's last wish, I believe, granted someone else. Granted, as most people, I think, are speculating to this point, to Savathun to take the Dreaming City. That, at very least, is what I believe Riven means at the end of the raid when she says, and I cannot wait to show you what she wished for, right?
And so, sorry to interrupt also. Sorry to interrupt.
Again, that's best guesses, because, again, like, they never definitively say it, but it seems relatively clear, at least.
That is really interesting.
And again, I don't want to say that that's 100% because...
Can we just
never definitively say it's most likely.
Can we get like a quick 2-sentence summary of who Savathun is for anybody who has no idea what's going on in the lore?
Yeah, sure. Savathun, sister of Oryx, speculated to be the current highest power of the Hive. All about trickery, all about deception. That's how she gains her power.
Sounds pretty awesome.
Sounds like a good raid boss.
Last time I ran up against somebody who was all about trickery, I was throwing explosive engrams around. I don't know if I'm down for this.
The trickster.
And that's the last time you saw an exotic.
Yeah, right? Ooh, I found an exotic. It just blew me up.
So yeah,
it really got me, I'm not going to lie. The first time I had the trickster adventure.
So yeah,
I legit thought I'd gotten an exotic.
Let's talk about this whole cycle and what's going on in the Dreaming City and like this 3-week, and now it's like it's reset, but nothing's changed, and
So yeah, the corruption itself expanding is part of the cycle, but as far as the corruption and the 3-week timer, it's related a lot to the last unreleased lore book. And I think it's kind of like one of these moments where it would be irresponsible to touch on that because it very much gets into kind of spoilerish territory for everyone. I genuinely do think that that is the case. And it's like the 3-week cycle definitely ends. And when it's reset, everybody's going to have a whole bunch of questions. But I think that when we do finally uncover the truth to power thing, you can expect something new from the game itself. But who knows, right? Because we are not in the know at this moment in time, right? Again, I don't want to push too far in it. This is kind of like, this is the topic, basically, that we'll be talking about when that final book is released.
Sounds good.
For the moment, not saying a thing.
Okay.
Will it be?
Can we talk
How
about?
do we find the last book?
I wish
we
I
talk
knew. I want that chronicler title, damn it.
Can we talk about Cade Six a little bit? Like he had some really interesting stuff going on with there's this last mission where you're on the quest to get his gun, the Ace of Spades, or fill it out or whatever you're doing with that thing. And you run into a couple of really interesting pieces of information by opening his chest. One is when he's talking, is he talking to Clovis Bray, or he's talking to, like, he talks about the long sleep, good night.
Oh, the long slow whisper as well.
Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit? Do we know anything about that yet?
I mean, if we're going to go ahead and say we know anything about the long slow whisper, I don't think there is anything that clearly points to it. You could have a whole bunch of theory, but I don't think there's anything truly definitive about what the long slow whisper is.
Mm-hmm.
It seems from the lore that we have at current that we can at least somewhat describe the Deepstone Crypt. So
that's been around for a while. That name has been around for a while, right?
Like, the best reference we get to the Deepstone Crypt is from the Legends card in Destiny 1, the very first one, which is the Deepstone Crypt, and it describes how Exos dream of the crypt. And how, whenever they go there in their dreams, they either walk there peacefully in the case of a few of them, or they fight a massive army. And so, in that instance, yeah, it's a really interesting subset of lore to expand on, but by that same note, there isn't much that exists there. There is a lot of theory, but not much where you can do anything to give a true definitive answer. And I think that's the most important thing to take away from it. As far as Cade's personal story, and even the stuff where he name drops a few other people within his core circle of people he leaves recordings for, there's a ton of fantastic stuff to talk about. I think the
Drifter was really good.
Wow. Like the Drifter one, the fact that he was even in there kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
When I heard that, I was like, wait,
right?
what? What is going on?
You know, when Cade says running with you would put a target on my back, I was like, wait, they ran in the crew together? Because that has some serious implications. Like, the Drifter in one of the Warlock set of armor, he kills his entire crew at a certain point during that series of lore tabs, and like getting into why is going to be like an entirely different rabbit hole to jump down, but you know, the Drifter is pretty notorious as a result, and if you've run with the Drifter, it's pretty remarkable to still be alive, I guess. But I'll simply say this too, you know, I think the best story that we get out of any of it is actually from the books of Cade, and he talks about himself, his own personal code, Honor, and Andal Brask, and how Andal Brask became the Hunter Vanguard, and how he became the Hunter Vanguard. And it's actually one of the saddest stories of all, partly because it involves Tannix, who has no goddamn house and needs no goddamn banner, but also because it's just this terrible story of how he loses his closest friend, and how he knows he should have been better for him, and how he should have seen more stuff coming. And it's just this really genuinely tragic story, especially when you read deeper into how Cade, at the very beginning of his life as Guardian, feels very alone. And that's part of the reason why he reawakens, or at least sort of starts to use the memories of his wife and son, regardless of whether they were planted, or whether they were real, or whether it was something that he was simply had to do under duress. Like, that's something that really links back into it all. And yeah, it's a really beautiful story on that front. Also, I gotta say this. Who here has managed to successfully farm a butthole from Gambit?
Nope.
No one. Okay. You have... I won't say much, but Malfesance's quest, you may or may not have seen midway through, but the mission that you get... Yeah, that's pretty huge and foundational. Like, it all but says that Callum, who is one of the individuals you hunt through that quest, was hunted down by none other than Shin Malfa, who wields the last word. They never refer to him by name, but there are so many indications that I would be incredibly surprised if it wasn't one of those characters. And who knows, maybe it won't be, and that'll just be a big surprise from Bungie. And
I say it. We're getting the last word. Just tell me.
I make no.
What's in the lore? Is it in the lore?
I make no predictions. All I will say is that Gambler's Wild is a thing that will happen, and Gambler's Wild will have story on the Drifter, and that's going to be cool because, yeah, the Drifter is now supposedly we are part of his crew when we get the Malfeasance.
Oh boy,
And
he's
the
gonna
final-
murder us all.
Oh yeah, so that's actually the really interesting note that he touches on, because he basically sits there and says, like, everybody talks about the golden gun, everyone talks about the man with the golden gun, but there's really only one man with a golden gun. And if legends are sort of to be pulled into, then yeah, you're looking at Shin Malfur, the owner of the Last Word, the infamous gunslinger. And so if you're looking to that, there is a potential storyline to be had there, but it's not clear that that's where they'll go. For all I know, they'll take some completely different direction with Gambler's Wild. But again, the Drifter's lore tabs, or at least his book, is, I think, as well, also from the perspective of Shin Malfur. And it's just like his reports of having interacted with the Drifter, even having like sat down and like spoken to him in person. Reason why I speculate that is because the Shin Malfur is referred to as a renegade hunter. He doesn't really respond too much to the authority of the tower. He's just off doing his own thing to serve the light. And
he's getting 111s, ADS 111s. That's why.
Oh my god! Right? But yeah, it's like you sit there and you have that moment of looking into the actual lore book, and it says that these are all records or reports from a renegade hunter. And so it's just like, there are so many little hints, so many little things here that all point towards Shin Malfur, and it's really hard to deny, but by that same token, we've not seen anything, so let it be said that nothing is truly set in stone. Right?
Wow.
That's very, very fascinating.
Can you remind me a little bit about Shin Malfur? Shin Malfur defeated Dredgen Yor?
Yes. According to legend and in the grimoire that we get from Thorn and the Last Word, there was a showdown at what was called either Swindler's or Dwindler's Ridge. I think it was Dwindler's Ridge, but not 100% on that. Point being, at this moment in time, Shin doesn't even say a word. Shin says absolutely nothing, but Dredgen Yor has kind of almost given up. There's a lot of stuff about an internal conflict between Dredgen and his former personality, which was Razor Lazir, and how the two are almost like a Jekyll and the Hyde. But when you actually look further into the final card, Dredgen just sort of gives up. And at that point, yeah, Shin does the classic golden gun and just shoots him down. Simple as that. Like their entire story is a fantastic one all in itself. It kills me because even to this day, like there was a series that I originally planned with a wonderful artist called Stefan Sejic, and I wanted to go ahead and tell that in more depth. But the really fascinating way that story unfolds meant that a lot of our art was not necessarily usable at first, because Dredgen Yor is kind of an invented personality, which is what's really cool. Like the idea of Dredgen Yor being the typical evil hunter is entirely fictitious. Razor Lazir was Dredgen Yor, and Razor Lazir was a titan. And so, even though you got the cloak of Dredgen Yor, it's all this amazing campaign of misinformation. Again, I'm trying to remember any kind of like deeper dive, because I know that John Goff, who originally wrote the story of The Last Word, I made a tweet thread on this at one point, and he actually replied to a whole bunch of it and gave this exact point of clarity. So that was like a really privileged kind of like series of tweets to be a part of, because you got like, the exact word on it, and we got the definitive answer, and it was like, yes, Dredgen Yor was a titan. So that was, yeah.
Wow.
The way that was written, I always had it pictured that it was like way back when, like,
Dark
like
Age, right?
Yeah. Like before the Iron Wolves, what were they called before that, or was it
before the Iron Lords, before the Warlords, before all that stuff?
Yeah, like in that Warlord period of time. So to hear they're still alive, does that mean it happened more recently than I suspected, or that maybe just people live freaking forever?
I mean, Guardians are immortal, so the time span really ends up becoming like neither here nor there. You could have had the entire events of the story unfold over all of Destiny's timeline up to when we've been born. Alternatively, it could have just been purely in the Dark Age. Alternatively, from that, it could have been kind of in the middle of the City Age. The one thing that's really clear is that the Crucible, or at least a kind of Crucible, had been established, that Dredgen Yor was becoming notorious in the Crucible, that Thorn, as a result, was becoming notorious alongside, and also that Tex Mechanica had to at very least have been a thing, because the Last Word was a Tex Mechanica weapon. So that needed to have at least been made.
Isn't
So
one of the
kind of
expansions going to be all about like an armory, like getting to
The Black Armory. That's the next
Right.
one.
The next
right,
one.
getting to
December.
understand like some badass guns from the Golden Age, right? So we're gonna get a chance to go in there. Wouldn't it make sense for the last word to be
In the Black Armor.
that's where in the Black Armory? I mean, we could be seeing
do you
some of these amazing
do you think
guns
Tex
coming up.
Mechanica is going to get featured, or is it still going to be like a mystery manufacturer beyond the Black Armory?
I think it's, again, like, it's really hard to speculate on that, but I think it's probably going to end up being a whole bunch of unique weapons. Like, the Black Armory itself may throw their stamp on it, but I think that they'll have their own kind of input and their own styles altogether. Tex Mechanica being what it is, it's a city-made foundry, and if the Black Armory supposedly works with Golden Age weapons, then Tex Mechanica ain't it, you know? Like, Tex Mechanica is very much about the old school, it's about the old ways, the Huckleberry, the Chaperone, First
Which
Curse,
is a
Last
submachine
Word.
gun, right? And not a pistol.
Yeah, the Huckleberry, yeah.
Mhm.
So, you know,
What?
you're looking at...
Why would they call it submachine gun the Huckleberry? That doesn't make any sense.
I don't understand it either, Brian. I was hoping Life could like tell me that it was a really fast firing hand cannon.
Oh,
I believed everything you guys said up until this point, and now I question everything.
Oh no, it's just a full auto hand cannon with rampage and interesting perks. Just refills the mag really quickly. But yeah, the whole thing is probably going to be its own set of weapons. Again, I never want to go ahead and say that something is going to be a thing, because there's very much this, like, this is the problem. Whenever I say something, it often ends up being taken by the community as kind of like, oh my god, I've said it's a thing, so it's going to be a thing. I want to make that very clear. Like, just because I say something's going to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen. Like, even if I say, like, I really think this is likely, Bungie could write something completely different and it's going to potentially be a fantastic story as well. Like, let the writers do what they do and we'll get the best stuff. Point being, if we were going to get the last word back, I think that it would be more likely to see it in Gambler's Wild, but again, that's, like, in their hands. It's in Bungie's hands.
That makes sense. That's logical.
And if they don't want to bring it back for any reasons, like, that's up to them too. Like, I think they have good reasons to do either. But again, we'll see. I make no kind of speculation as to what Bungie is going to do on anything. I leave it entirely to them. Like, they should have free reign on this.
Briar, we have a bunch of community questions to go over, but do you want to jump and we can go back in and hopefully catch some of those towards the end of the show? But do you want to jump in and start talking a little bit about the TWAB? Is it a TWAB or a TWAB?
I don't know. I haven't read it yet. I literally told you I was going to read it as we go, so I'm really unqualified to make that determination.
Well, I wasn't asking just you. I was asking the whole crew.
It's a mix. It's a mix.
It's a mix.
Yeah, there's some good news.
There's definitely some good news, but
That's some good news.
I mean, I'm sold on it as purple candles. So,
Ooh.
That's true. That art looks 8-bit. It looks really cool. They're making some changes. There's going to be a new update coming October 30th, or it's planned in October 30th. With Destiny 2 update 2.0.5, and there's a bunch of issues that they go through that they want to make us aware of. They know about the problem with getting the Ascendant Primeval Servitor, and they're going to make adjustments to how frequently it appears in the future, which will help, well, apparently everybody on this call get the malfeasance.
Yay.
Well, what's interesting is they said that it's supposed to show up. So on a full curse week, it's supposed to show up as equal as every other primeval, and that just does not add up for a lot of people. There's people who spent like 20 hours playing Gambit and never saw it once.
Yeah, I never saw it.
Yeah, I didn't spend 20 hours.
I played a good amount of Gambit. I didn't spend like Patrick on his first day was in there for like 10 hours before he saw it.
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
I can't do Gambit.
I can't tolerate Gambit for that long.
That does not sound like it's an equal spawn rate for the other primevals. So
But I think that's their change to it.
Yeah, that's
what they're gonna
change.
change.
It's what they're going to change.
Right, it's gonna spawn more frequently.
It's gonna spawn just as likely as the captain coming up, or any of the other guys.
Okay, I misread that.
But right
I thought they said that their intent.
The percentage is.
I read it the same way you did, Tefty.
Yeah, I thought the intent was that it was supposed to show up at the same time as all the other primevals during a full curse week, but it's not.
No.
But yeah, I misread it. My bad.
Yeah. One thing to also note here is that if you're thinking like, oh man, they're just giving it to everybody and they're going to give everyone Dreadgun too, is they're adjusting how frequently the rewards appear. So if you're trying to fill out that Gambit badge with all the gear, if you're trying to get the ship and the Sparrow, yes, the Ascendant Servitor is going to appear more, but you're also looking at potentially not getting the ship and the Sparrow each time. So they're preserving the grind, but by that same token, giving a fairer set of odds to it and making it more reasonable in that sense. And I think this is actually the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Because again, like, Dreadkin is a title. Like, it should be a grind, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But this is definitely more of it gets defeating when you just don't see it. I think I would feel better even if I saw it and maybe I didn't get the stuff to drop, but it's like, at least I know it exists. At least I know it's a thing that's out there. Great.
Yay.
Yeah. Yay.
They're also making some changes to Gambit matchmaking. They're trying to make some changes so that the playlist loads faster. They're also re-enabling quitter penalties for the Gambit playlist. However, they're easing up on the restriction of the quitter penalties so that if you get disconnected by a internet problem, you're not hurt
Stuck
by
for
the
20
penalty.
minutes.
So if you got to leave a Gambit match, pull your cord. Got it.
Got it. Pull a Crota.
Crota.
Power ammo changes are coming as well. Sleeper Stimulant ammo crate will grant 2 shots down from 4, and sword ammo crate will grant 12 sword ammo up from 6. So is that going to be in addition?
Yes.
Is this in addition to lowering the aim assist on the sleeper?
Yes.
Sounds like
So the sleeper's getting hurt twice in Gambit specifically.
That's what I wanted them to do initially, was hit the ammo, because if someone comes over and they kill 2 of my teammates, then or you just have to try and dodge 2 bullets from them or whatever. But having 4 and then picking stuff up off the ground, it's just it's so much ammo.
I still think they need to make it so in Gambit specifically, those scavenger perks do not work on linear fusion for sleeper specifically, because like right now I can pick up 5 or 6 shots for 1 brick on the ground.
That's true.
Yeah. And then on top of that, like I feel like it's a lot less rage inducing if you see something which genuinely takes a lot more skill to use. So let's say someone invades with a supremacy and then really quickly 1, 2, 3, 4 and the entire team's gone. Like, I can't even be mad at that. But when it's, really quickly dying in succession to someone who's got the sleeper with Catalyst, then, at that point, it's
not fun.
Cause for huge irritation.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's supposed to be a fun game mode.
Like,
Gambit. It's not.
Right?
It's supposed to be.
We're also getting an update on October 16th. This is going to be update 2.0.4. They're going to add the ability to hover over lost sectors to see their name once the player's looted them. That'll really help with the spider bounties.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, where the hell am I going?
Yeah.
Yeah. Chat, help me.
Yeah, I know.
Where
I'm
do I go?
like, guys, where is the freaking drain? Okay.
Like,
It's the one that I've learned is the drain. I know where that
the EDZ and all of the 20 lost sectors that are there. Right. It's really welcome relief.
Players can now track up to 3 pursuits. They added through Fire and Flood, Zenobia D, and Crooked Fang 4 FR to the World Legendary Pool. Edge Transit will have some company.
Sad about it.
Yay, the meme dies.
Sad about it.
You're sad about it?
Still haven't gotten one. Edge Transit.
No, not a single one.
No.
One day.
Can't get one to drop, man.
You'll get it one day.
I'm hunting
I
for
hope
that God roll, Edge Transit.
I'm hunting for a full page in my vault of Edge Transit.
All Edge Transit.
All of
That's my
every
end game.
single role imaginable.
That's my end game. Yeah.
They're increasing scout rifle damage in PvE and against non-player enemies in Gambit.
I like that.
That's
I
good.
like that it's that scout rifles are going to have more of a play.
Yeah.
That makes
And that
sense.
they're- and-
From what
and-
I know about you, that makes sense.
What do you mean? What do you know
Nothing.
about me?
Let's move
What's
on.
that supposed to mean? No.
Nothing. I have no idea.
All right, but I do what I do like about it is more than just what it's specifically saying, but that they have the ability to tweak that specifically, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's nice.
And I'm gonna have to ask you to explain that at some point, Brad.
I made a comment a couple of weeks ago that scout rifles were a coward's weapon.
Is that what you did?
Yeah.
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 Nah.
Well, I am a coward then.
Fix the bug where prime engrams were going straight to the postmaster at the end of Crucible matches. That will now show alongside other end of match rewards. I've never gotten a prime engram from a Crucible match.
I have. It went to my postmaster.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. I wouldn't know if I got it. I would
Because
just,
it's in the
hey.
postmaster.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. They added transmat effects to collections under the flare category.
Thank God.
Neato.
Small but good.
Yeah,
It's neat.
I
Yeah.
want. Well, I love that one that came in Warmind that looks like a digital transmat thing.
That one's cool.
It's the best
Ah.
transmat in the entire game, and I don't think she's ever sold it, Tess. Otherwise, I would have bought like 100 of them because that's my favorite transmat.
I'm
still
curious
think-
if
yeah.
do you guys see a different when you preview the transmat? It's not the same. It seems sped up. Do you guys have that same problem?
Well, it shows
Like
you
when you
halfway
go to-
through, so what you have to do is refresh it, unless there's a difference on console, which I wouldn't know.
It might be like when I go to watch it, I go to preview it. It's like a rushed version of the
Really?
transmat.
That doesn't happen
Yeah.
on PC.
Maybe because
Weird.
there's so little on the screen, this is the first time you're actually seeing high frame rate on the console.
Wow.
Maybe, Brian.
I say this, by the way, as a console scrub. So, I mean, how about me?
We've identified a very rare issue with the Gambit invasion portal not reactivating once used.
So that
Yeah.
was a thing. Because
Yeah,
there was a
I've
few
run into that
times
too.
where I've been like, this portal is not letting us through. Why? They have their primeval up.
Interesting.
It's really
Mhm.
weird. Yeah.
And they're developing a fix for the 1,000 voices that causes a loud screeching noise.
Has
I
anyone-
want to talk about that. Yes. I have a clip of it. I'm going to post it in the chat. I will warn you, turn your volume all the way down. All the way down
really
before you
that
watch
loud
the clip.
once?
It's
So-
bad. It's like
really bad.
it's like Omnicle level screen.
Wow.
Oh,
It's-
really?
It's
No,
worse
it's
to
bad.
the
So
edge.
it happened to us during
Oh
the
my God, that's
Running
awful.
Ribbon's heart. So I was just in the room, you're constantly having to do the countdowns of 10, 9, 8. So you know when to pick up the coins or whatever. So we all had
my.
it. It happened with all of us. I turned my volume all the way down. I didn't know what was happening. I was looking at OBS. I was like, is that my PS4? Is my computer breaking? What is happening? None of us could hear the call outs that was happening. And then it finally stopped and we came back and we were like, what was that?
What just happened?
We had no idea that it was all of us that had experienced it.
Holy
It was
crap.
the worst experience. It was, so I'm glad that's not
Sounds
gonna
like
be
it's
there.
crashing. Or something. It's terrible.
I was going to
Yeah,
ask
I thought my
Tefty
computer
to play
was
it
breaking.
for our audio listeners, but
I'm
I
afraid.
No, I don't know if you want to do
Yeah.
that.
No, look it up. Yeah.
Just imagine
Yeah.
a really.
Did you put it on your
really
Twitter feed?
obnoxious-
Bots,
I will. I will
put it
tweet
on your
out.
Twitter feed. That way, if
I'll
people
put it
want to
on-
see it,
Yeah.
they can
It will
find
be on my Twitter. It's literally the sound. Yeah, it's the sound of the 1,000 voices. We thought it's Riven
Yep.
getting mad at us. So
Yeah.
actually, we had the wish active where we had failsafe.
Mhm.
Best
And it was
wish.
the first time we had done that. So we thought that it was failsafe just screaming.
It sounds robotic in a way, right? It sounds
yeah,
like
but it's really funny because they said in the TWAB that it happens when you shoot 1,000 voices while strafing or jumping.
which you're gonna do
Which
a
is
lot.
like 90%.
Yeah.
that's the game. That's
like
not the specific thing.
Almost always when you're shooting.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
Apple saying you're holding it wrong.
Yeah. So this happened to me midway through practically a very similar section, except we were at, I think it was Riven, and one of my mods had
no.
acquired it. And we were like DPSing at that moment in time. And it was like we had to get eye call outs, and then all of a sudden we have this thing. Your facial expression must have been perfect for what was going on with my face at the time being what? Except probably add in a few more curse words and even worse. Because, loudest noise I've heard in a very long time. I'm trying to remember if there was another thing in Destiny that also caused like a massive sound cue. Because I feel like we've had something like this before, right?
Yeah.
I'm not.
Things like this have definitely happened before.
Hmm.
Joe, but
I don't think
this
I've
seems
ever
as-
personally experienced
this
it.
seems extreme.
This
Yeah.
was just I'm turning my volume off. It's gone. I muted everything in OBS. It was bad.
That's
Real bad.
amazing.
Mhm.
I have yet to get the 1,000 voices.
Me neither.
Yeah, I don't have it. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry. I have 9 raid completions.
I've been doing it every week.
Feels bad, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Update 2.0.5 is coming out October 30th. There's going to be some changes in there as well. The rebalancing functionality of distribution dynamo perks.
So
I don't even understand this
surprise.
sentence.
Okay.
Boy.
I'm a little
Dynamo is
upset
a
about
perk.
that. I'm a little
Dynamo
upset.
is a perk where when you use your class ability, it gives you super energy.
Yes.
So what people or what I have been doing is I have the double dodge chest piece for Hunter.
That's right. I just
And I
got
run
it, and
all
it's
super
amazing.
mods and have the Dynamo perk.
Yes.
So you just roll around on the floor and you have your super and like
Oh, really?
It's really cool.
It's like what, 2 minutes and 45 seconds to get
It's
a super if you use every
fast.
dodge. Yeah.
It's really
Bad.
cool. And I think if you're going to use your super to double dodge and you're going to make your whole build around that, then that's what you should be able to do.
I think the really troubling bit is when it gets comboed with things like Shards of Galanor. Because by that point, if you get, like, say, 2
Yeah.
kills with a super, you dodge a few times, you're almost there practically.
Yeah.
And it's not long at all. And that's been plaguing competitive from what I hear.
I'm just going to say it. PvE, like, I got it. I get the whole PvP thing, but fuck me, man, that's a fun perk and it's a fun way to play in PvE.
The way they're changing it is pretty cool though. Right?
Where you need to be near opponents for the benefit to happen.
Yes.
Which I think makes a lot more sense because it means you can't just like camp at the back of a map and then just like dodge around a tree with no intent except getting the super, you know?
So
I like the change a lot.
which should work in PvE as well, right? So if you're near some thrall, you dodge.
Yeah.
You get super back.
Yeah.
Or you pop a.
You just have to be near
healing
opponents.
well or
so it
something.
actually makes you use your dodge appropriately especially if you're using gambler's dodge, it makes you use it properly. Which I think is great.
Yeah. That's a fair
they're-
change. Yeah.
They're slightly increasing sword damage and PvE to address player feedback.
Can I
Cool.
get on a little
Fusion
soapbox
rifle
about
damage
this
as
one?
well.
What's up?
I need a little soapbox for a second. Make swords swing further. Like swords in D1 made you feel powerful because you could swing and you would travel with that thing, right? Like
Yeah.
you were fast and you
Sure.
would go. Like damage is great. Swing distance. Look into it.
You know what it
You
is
know
though?
that-
Like melees in Destiny 2 have been the worst they've ever been in the
They're really
franchise.
inconsistent.
And swords
In
are
terms of,
just
like hit detection.
yeah, hit detection. Like you
Just,
end up going
connect it,
through
yeah.
all the time. In fact, if you use Sentinel and you do like the swipe slam, like almost always you're gonna go through the enemy that you're trying to go through when you do the slam. So like it's better to jump and go swipe slam than to like swipe slam because you're always going through enemies instead of like the hit detection being
Yeah,
like
that's true.
here's the target that you're supposed to hit.
Yeah.
Still not using Way of the Wraith in Crucible because the hit detection is not great.
Yep.
There was what was the Ascendant challenge where you had to like carry the sword like across those platforms?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It glitched out for me, and I got to keep the sword in the Dreaming City. So I was basically like flying
Really?
around because that was one of the old school Crota
Oh.
swords.
It was
Where
the
you
old
jump in the
school
air
one,
and you
yeah.
Defy
swipe it, and
gravity.
you just like fly through the air.
Yeah.
And you can just keep swiping. I was all over the place. It was amazing. There's no time limit. I just kept doing it.
Dude, I wish that would have happened. That sounds so cool.
Oh, it was
That's
awesome.
what they should do. When it's Hive Week, when the Hive infests the Dreaming City, just drop random swords
Oh,
everywhere.
that'd be nice.
Imagine
Yeah.
a bunch of guardians flying
That's a
all over
Crota
the
return,
streaming
right?
city.
That's a wish.
That'd be
Yeah,
great.
that'd be amazing.
That's a
Yeah,
wish.
it's
That's a wish.
Hear my thoughts, Riven?
What is it? Wish? What is it? Wish 15 we're missing?
They're increasing the viability of malfeasance in PvE and Gambit activities. So they're going to buff
That's good.
malfeasance in PvE.
Very good.
I wonder-
Adjusting.
I wonder what they could. So, increasing viability. Like, what do you think that means? Like, what do you?
Oh, we don't have details on it yet.
No, I know, but I mean, they never give us details. Our job is to make up shit that they might be doing.
They could have it do more damage.
Well, so
bullet doing more?
obviously, a lot of people were talking. Well, besides being a smartest, so there are a lot of people were talking about it dropping.
This is
from
what
a
you do all the
180
time, Pope. What are you talking about?
I know, no, but then
90%
Briar
of the
calls me
time,
out.
you're being a smart ass
Okay,
about this.
okay, fair enough. I'll take that.
All right.
Okay, so moving it from some people were talking about moving it from like it would be powerful if it went from a 180 to 150, and then the damage was to make it a 150.
I don't
and
think they're going
cannon.
to change the archetype.
I don't think they should either
Yeah.
because it's
Okay.
all about getting those shots into the enemy and
Mhm.
blowing them up.
Yeah.
So I think if anything, they should increase the explosion when you finally do blow them all up. Increase the damage on the explosion. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that works. Because, I mean, think about the way that you would want to balance for PvP. If you've got 5 shots in a target already with a 180, it's already dead. So
Yeah.
I mean, more AoE is not necessarily going to like be a bad thing for that in PvP because it separates it from Luna's and gives it a reason to be played.
I don't have that gun, so I don't know the answer to this question. If I shoot 5 shots and they all land, but they land in different targets, does that count? And do they all get an explosion?
No, it needs to be the same one.
Same target. And
Same.
the thing is, it seems to me when I read about the gun, it seems to be that it's a boss gun, a single target, like heavy, shielded heavy damage.
Isn't it
lots of
kinetic?
Yeah, and
kinetic,
the funny
yeah.
thing is it's kinetic, and it just doesn't seem like I would ever use it, to be honest with you. It doesn't seem like it would take the place of, if I'm going to be using an exotic slot and I'm going to be fighting a boss, I'm not going to be using a primary damage hand cannon kinetic. I'm going to be putting that slot into a special
Heavy or a
or
special.
a heavy, right? So it doesn't seem like it really has a place. It seems like a really odd gun.
It seems
Yeah.
like the explosion has to be massive for it to pay off. Or
Right.
maybe reduce the number of bullets required for the explosion, or maybe if a teammate
Now you're
shoots,
talking.
or if a teammate shoots, reduce the number of shots required for multiple people to cause the explosion. Like maybe if
Well, I
3
think
people shot
that's-
it.
I think that's what it does, right? Because I mean, here's the thing: malfeasance is really rare right now, or malfeasance, or however the hell it's pronounced, but it's really rare. And I think that is actually how the functionality works. Where if you have, say, 3 people running malfeasance, you need 5 shots combined.
Yes, that is how it
Well,
works.
That makes a difference. Then a
Yeah,
fire
that-
team running that
Yeah.
thing, that
Yeah.
could be a
right.
That could be really
Cool gun.
fun.
But
Yeah.
maybe have like the teammate interaction like reduce the number required for it to buff it if they're not going to buff the explosion. Yeah.
Maybe.
I think honestly, it seems like they need to just make that explosion really pay off to get the 5th shot in.
What was the explosion from the? It was like was it a submachine gun from Crota's End?
Some machine
It
gun.
was an auto rifle, heavy fire auto rifle. Do you remember that
Oh,
one?
necrochasm.
Necrochasm. That's
Oh
right.
yeah, okay. yeah, yeah.
Like that was a decent sized explosion, right? Didn't they?
Was,
that was the size of a cursed thrall. Yeah, it was
was a
basically
fun
like having a
explosion.
firefly.
That was cool. That was cool to see. I mean, I
It was
You're
cool to
talking
see.
about-
The gun was shit for the longest time.
Until
That
the
was
end of
just a
Destiny.
useless
to
gun.
actually be good. Yeah.
it was great at the end.
Mhm.
Are you talking
really
about that
is.
size of explosion, Tefty?
I'm talking about an explosion that's going to make you go, "Oh my god, I can't wait to use malfeasance and proc that explosion."
Oh, like I'm gonna use this over sleeper.
Yeah.
That's what we need. We need a.
We need that.
I'm gonna use
It-
this over sleeper explosion.
It's got to have some crazy payoff for you to want to switch off from like Whisper or Sleeper or Telesto or like it's got to have an angle. Right now, it seems like the angle is really lackluster.
I feel
Yeah, it
as
doesn't
well
seem like
with the way that it works in Gambit and the fact they're going to improve it specifically in PvE and Gambit, I feel as though that's going to be a big emphasis on taken damage, though, which it already gets bonuses to, but just more bonus taken damage.
Mhm.
And then also,
Yeah, it's cool.
versus Invaders, I'm trying to remember what the actual kill time is, but I think it can kill in 3 shots. Like I need to look that up because
Because it does extra damage
Yeah,
to
this is-
Taken and Invaders.
yes,
Yeah.
2 Invaders.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a really great potential defending weapon, and I think they'll probably fall back a little bit more on that and see what they can do about
Okay,
addressing
interesting.
that particular issue.
They're like,
That'd be
guys,
cool.
use this instead of your Sleeper. Come on.
Yeah, see, it's so much
Mhm.
better. It's prettier.
They're adjusting visibility of the Titan's banner shield, making it easier for players to see through the effects.
It's good.
Good.
They're adjusting exotic rewards to help reduce the number of duplicate drops. Players may still receive duplicates, but there will be better chances for Forsaken exotics when receiving exotic rewards.
Why is that? Why is that? Can I just like vent for a second that shouldn't be the case with such a small drop rate, and the exotics, we're not going to get through them all. We're not going to get. We're going to be in Destiny.
There's not that many
3.
exotics that randomly drop in Forsaken, though.
There might be some curve that increases though as time goes by. Not
I've
that I
gotten
know,
one.
but like I mean,
I've
they
gotten
could
one.
up that rate.
I've gotten one from the Forsaken. One Forsaken exotic. How many?
So you
have
don't.
you guys got?
Are you arguing that they should not drop duplicates at all?
Correct?
but there are random rolls on the exotics that we have.
Mhm.
But I think that my argument is that they should have a bank, a pool of exotics that are available for the new release. You should be guaranteed when you earn an exotic that it is one of the random exotics in that pool, but once you get through all of them, then it switches to,
to dupes.
you've now received everything. It's checking something off a list, and now you're making your way through it. With such a small drop rate, I think that we want to see a guarantee that you're not getting it until you've gotten
How many
all of them.
exotics?
I want to play with
How many
these.
exotics in general have you gotten since Forsaken dropped, Pope?
I've received 5 exotics. All of them have been D1 exotics, repeats that I already have, and 1 Forsaken exotic.
Destiny 2 vanilla exotics.
Yeah, they're like they're all been ones that I've already
You'd
had.
be down 6 exotics from Forsaken at this point. I don't know, man. I think
That's like all of them.
it's quite
No,
a
it's
few.
not.
It's definitely not all of them, but it's quite a few.
It depends on weapons and armor, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's tons of armor. I think it's like, 6, maybe 5 new pieces per class. And then weapon-wise, there's
Is there that many?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there
So,
5?
I mean, yeah, I'm pretty
Feels
sure
like
there
maybe
is.
2 or 3.
So-
I'm gonna look at my
I'd love
class.
to be able to, as I progress through the classes, right? I would like to be able to try an exotic per class as I'm progressing through the
4
story.
per class. Yeah.
So if right now, I've made my way through the entire Hunter supers, all of it, ranked them up, played through the story, played through Forsaken, played through the end game, played through and I have just gotten 1 exotic to play with that Hunter. That just seems, it
Honestly,
just doesn't
Pope,
seem right.
I think this is the problem, is that in order to have something feel rare, you're never not going to have this emotion associated with the pre not having it. Like, you're always
Right.
going to have this conundrum until you get those exotics. And then if you get the exotics right away, they don't feel as special.
But I understand that philosophy, but this is different than that. This isn't me jonesing for exotics. This is me just saying that philosophically, I feel like you need to be able to experience the intended gameplay by the time that you're consuming the product, right? So if I'm playing through one of my entire characters through the expansion and into the end game, and of that character, I've seen 1 exotic of that character, then that's not, then mathematically I don't see myself getting to try it. Like, by the time we're on to Destiny 3, by the time I've received the exotics.
I agree with Pope basically on this. I don't like your solution, Pope, but
Okay.
I do basically agree. I don't think we're getting enough exotic. And the fact that we're getting so many duplicates, like, after, I don't know how many hours I've put into Forsaken, but I've got, I think, 1 or 2 new exotics, none of the new weapons. Like, I'd like a higher drop rate than that.
I understand they should be rare, but we need to, like,
So they are.
I don't.
They're talking about that they're gonna
Right. Yeah.
have some
And I'm okay with
prevention,
that.
Which
I like the change that they're doing personally. It's
Yeah.
still, when you see one, it's doubling down on exotics are rare, but when you see one drop, you're going to be like, ooh, because you know that it's more
Mhm.
likely to be a new exotic.
To get the high of, like, getting really excited about getting one, you need to have the low of getting the duplicate sometimes.
Yeah.
But I do think that equation is a little skewed to just getting punched in the nuts over and over again right now.
So I think that it's got to be a low drop rate, but that's partly because of the philosophy of how exotic engrams work. Compare them to, like, the equivalent yellow or orange gear that you get in something like, say, Diablo. And those things will drop more commonly, if I'm not mistaken, but they'll drop more commonly because the stats on them are way more variable.
Mhm.
Whereas if you have, say, an Antius Wards that drops, the only things that you can potentially get on that are going to be a few small perks here and there, and there's a very limited set of different things that you can get on that particular role. So that's kind of, I think, the way that the philosophy of it needs to end up working, is an exotic should be like an arsenal-defining piece, like
Mhm.
when you have
You
this
make a
set
build
exotic,
around it.
build around that exotic, right?
Sure.
And so, like, that's why they're so rare and they're so unique, because they open up new play styles. They open up new ways to think about your build.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, like, look at something like, say,
The Hunter chess piece, for example, that we just finished talking
Double
about.
Dodge, right? Double Dodge, 6th Kairos.
You build something around it, right? You get lots of super energy. You're harder to kill. I mean, it's such a cool exotic that I'd love other people to be able to play and check it out. And it's just, I don't know. It just feels like I understand we all wanted them to be rare. And I was the first person to be saying that. Everybody got everything, but it feels like the pendulum swing from here where everybody got everything in the first week to, and there's probably some place.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they're doing, right? And I think I'd rather see them make a small adjustment to it than like swing it all the way to the other side. And basically now everybody's got every exotic and no drop is exciting anymore.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree.
I like that they're making a change and looking at it. I didn't think that it still being able to see a duplicate until you got through. Anyway, go ahead. Let's.
Good talk.
Is that it? We got a small teaser image for Festival of Lost, which is going to start on
There was
October
stuff about
16th.
the raid and all of that.
What stuff? Go ahead.
Wishes and curses?
I don't have it pulled up.
The
There
wishes
was
and
some-
curses.
There's not going to be a hard mode for the raid.
Oh yeah, that's big.
That's interesting.
That's very big.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is big news.
They've decided that they wanted to focus on the best version of Last Wish, and they did. They
Yep.
made a great job with it. And by doing that, they decided to not make a prestige mode. And if you read in between the lines, they kind of allude to the fact that things like the dungeon, the Shattered Throne, are the seemingly efforts that have come about by not putting resources towards things like a prestige mode and that type of stuff. So
I'm okay if that's the trade-off. I'm okay with it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Me too.
I mean, I would absolutely love to see more things like the Shattered Throne, because that was an incredible experience. That's end game
was, yeah.
content that technically is past the raid. So if you can't get a team of 6 together but want
I
to
haven't done it
experience
yet.
end game content, like that is fantastic. Like I am very happy if they devote more resources towards that angle in the end game.
Gotta say this too, man. Like, I think that Last Wish is okay with its single difficulty because of the way that Rivensbane and that entire Triumph system works. Like, take a look at people who want a really big kind of hard mode achievement. Petra's run is there. You've got all the different runs where you all need to run with set subclasses of set elements. You've got all the different challenges that are present within that. And there's a ton of stuff to bite your way through, and it's meaty. Like, it's not a small deal. And that's on top of all the different raid drops that you could be getting, both the random rolled stuff and the curated 10 masterwork drops and the exotics. So, like, it's good, but it's good because they basically took all the depth that Prestige Mode added and put it in the game anyway as kind of like all this auxiliary progression stuff, as I think someone like Dado might say. Like, that's why I think it's an excellent trade-off. And if, like, we had the choice, I'd say, yeah, do it this way in future, because this works out really nicely.
Yeah.
Like, there is a hard mode version, and it's
We also have the annual pass this year with a content release every quarter, like kind of guaranteed, which is a little bit different than what we've seen in the past. If we were getting no hard mode raid, and we were in a Taken King situation where we hadn't heard anything about any future content, and it's like November, December, then I might be getting a little bit fidgety about it. But we know the Black Armory is coming up in December. We know that the Gambit event is coming up in the spring. We know that there's going to be a summer event with another raid layer in it. Like, to me, that it makes it easier. Like, having these steps along the path makes it a little easier to say, well,
Agreed.
okay.
Yeah.
It's the roadmap we wanted, right?
Yeah,
It is.
I'm hoping
I'm okay with it.
just had to pay $40 each for it.
I'm hoping there's like a secret dungeon here and there as time, like maybe end of
that'd be
October
great.
or like
So good.
November.
I would
There's a
love
secret
that.
dungeon that's unlocked, and then
A Festival of the Lost Dungeon?
yeah, it would be amazing with some maybe
If that's what we're getting instead of prestige and difficulty settings,
Sign
then
me
I
up.
think that's worth. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Like, that more equivalent stuff to the Whisper of the Worm mission. Like, I don't
Yep.
want to say that that's what we would get, but like, they opened themselves up to do different stuff, and I think that we're down for it, assuming that it follows that same vein of like a really challenging
Yep.
end game activity.
Did you guys
Good stuff.
Did you guys get a chance to solo the dungeon? Get the emblem
I
triumph?
didn't solo it. No.
I tried to solo it my first time, and that didn't go well. I got up to the petitioners, and then I crawled back to my fire team.
That encounter
No.
is fantastic, and I love the challenge that
It's
it
so
presents.
Mhm.
The
It's
ogre
really good.
soloing that is brutal. I died like 40 times on the first like attempt to solo that. I got it done.
Did you do it on stream?
Oh yeah, for sure. So it took me 4 hours the first attempt to solo it, and it was very satisfying. Like I love that type of content because like legendary
That's
mode,
Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Destiny
yeah, and
version.
also legendary mode
Mhm.
Halo doing the
Oh,
like that.
yeah.
That's
We're doing the Nightfall solo in year 1 of Destiny
exactly.
1.
It's the type
That's
of
right.
type
Yeah.
of content that reminds you that. Although this one is like you got to invest at least an hour
Yeah.
to
What
spend that.
light level?
it reminds
what
me of,
power
like-
level were you?
I was like 595.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, it reminds me of back in the days of, like, post-Taken King, roundabout, like, the winter of that. That was the point at which I was trying to invent my own fun. And so outside of doing that, even though I was over-leveled, I was like, level 35 Prison of Elders. As a solo activity, you can technically do it, but it's one of the tougher things that you can do solo in
Mhm.
Destiny at the time. And I think this kind of harkens back to that.
Yep.
Like, technically there is just about enough wiggle room to do it solo, and even to do it solo flawless, but man, you have to be technically perfect at everything.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot afford any kind of, like, mistakes here or there. Even, like, you need to have a properly kitted out build for it.
Yep.
Like, if I'm going to go in there and I'm using, say, a hunter, like, I want my rigs. I want to make sure I've got my rigs. And I'm doing a Titan, then Ursa Furiosa might be my go-to. Like,
I wish I had that when I was doing it with my Titan. That would have been nice. Also, if you don't have the catalyst for Whisper or the Worm, it's rough. That helps significantly
Yeah.
mhm.
to do that
The
encounter
damage
solo.
it adds is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Whisper
Yeah, I'm in
breathing is
my
very good.
second week of that right now.
Yeah, it's very important for damage output. But yeah, I love that content. I really hope they do more of it. Like the raiding experience is always going to be a pinnacle moment for Destiny, but like seeing things open up that 2 or 3 people or the people who want to challenge solo can do, that's end game content. I think Destiny really flourishes in that angle. I want to see more of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this was great.
You know what I'm seeing too is after Forsaken, as opposed to Destiny 2 year 1, is I'm seeing people kind of specialize in how I like to play the game. There's a breadth of content and a breadth of activities and rewards that you can focus on. Okay, I really want to spend some time in the comp playlist to get the Luna's Howl. I really want to focus on, doing the raid and doing the dungeon and trying to solo the dungeon. Like, somehow it feels different than year 1, where in year 1 you were just done with everything in a couple of weeks, and you do
This is
Crucible
so
or
much
whatever.
better, man.
There's just so much more to this.
Yep.
Hey,
Their
before we
pacing
move,
seems much better.
Yeah.
Their pacing
Yes,
of
it
releasing
does.
things and as
Exactly.
tackling things. And
The
on
rewards
October
too.
16th, we're going to have the Festival of the Lost, which we don't know what that's going to bring, but I mean, it says it's going to bring a celebration of lost heroes and a new challenge to tackle. It includes a costume party and ends with a quest to solve a murder.
Mm-hmm.
A murder.
dun
Mm.
dun dun.
But
I love
the
that
fact that it
image.
says a new challenge to tackle is intriguing, because usually these events don't necessarily give us a challenge to tackle.
No,
Right.
but they'll give us a new quest, which is going and talking to every vendor in the tower. And then
Check this
Let's-
step.
let's be a little careful on the hype. on
Go
that one.
talk to. I mean, I'm not like hyping it up, but just the description of it is, it's more than what we've had for the other Festival of the Lost.
There was also something that in the updates that we kind of skipped over, but I thought was a big deal. They added masterwork cores as rewards for specific spider wanted bounties and
Oh.
general scrapper bounties that you get when you're dismantling stuff, like if you're dismantling armor, weapons that you get. One of the scrapper bounties will pop up that you have to get done in that day. They're going to be rewards for those things. I think that's great.
Yeah.
That's a good change.
Scrapper bounties are really smart, because the entire philosophy behind getting masterwork cores right now is dismantle legendaries anyway, so that just feeds into the
Sure.
entire philosophy even more.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
And Briar, this is I'm surprised you skipped over this. This is important to you. Reducing the time for single shader deletion in your inventory.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't interface with the shader deletion system at all. Like I just don't interface with it. It's infuriating and frustrating. So I forget about it completely. You know what I do is I use Dim to just kind of manage it for me, like automatically.
Throw your stacks away, right?
No, what it does is like I'll say empty postmaster in Destiny Item Manager, and it'll just like
vault, right?
Push everything into the vault, and then someday I guess I'll have 500 slots of shaders in the vault, and I'll have to deal with it then.
Dude, that's my problem.
But until that day,
that's a problem.
I choose not to give a shit.
That's my problem right now. I've got like a page of shaders that I don't want to just hover over and be like, click, click, click. Like the fact that they said reduce the time. How about just make it a click? There doesn't need to be any time involved whatsoever. I'm not like, oh God, is this a master core that I'm deleting? No, it's a shader that can go and rebuy from the book.
It's a shader that you can reacquire. Exactly. Yeah. Just let us spam it.
Yeah. Just
if you get rid of your favorite shader, just buy it back.
Go and repurchase it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There really shouldn't be a status bar on it. Yeah.
You guys want to do some Twitter questions?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of time do we have right now?
We've been live for just about 2 hours.
Yep.
All right.
So not a ton of time.
Do we have an ad read we got to do?
We have an opportunity to do an ad read, yes.
I say, Briar, you want to pick out some of the BIFE questions specifically? We definitely want to get through those.
Okay.
Definitely want to get through those ones.
This would be a good
some
time.
more lore.
We've been talking about a lot of activities in the game that are fun to do with friends. And sometimes maybe some of you just started playing Destiny. Maybe all of your friends went off to play another game and they haven't come back to Destiny yet, and you just got to find people to play with. One of the ways that you can do that is by downloading and using an app called GamerLink. GamerLink is a sponsor of the podcast, and they created a LFG app that's more than just that. It's also a way to meet other gamers and create a clan chat system and find people to play with. So we highly recommend that you guys go check out this app, download it. It's on iPhone, it's on Android. You can work on it on your PC. It's also more than just for Destiny. It's across multiple platforms. They do a ton of other games, and it's a good place to meet and get people to play with. So I've taken a look at it. I've been using it to find people to play with, and it's great. There's always people on, and it's really simple to use.
There you go.
So if you guys want to check it out, check in the description below. There will be a link to GamerLink, and check it out.
There you go.
Thank you, GamerLink.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, first question. Hugo Rune 79 says, Bife, after educating our colonial cousins on the difference between biscuits and cookies, what is your go-to biscuit for dunking in a nice cup of tea? I'm a hobnob man myself.
Hobnobs are good, but I'm one for the classic digestive biscuit with chocolate. Oh, so wonderful.
Oh, that sounds
doesn't sound
appetizing.
tasty at all.
Digestive
That was
biscuit?
Healthy.
Yes.
Digestive biscuit?
What
Wonderful.
the hell is
It's
that?
crazy you don't know what that is.
Could they come up with a better name than that?
It's got like
though? That's
enzymes
like
and
saying,
chocolate in there?
I want a vomit sandwich.
What is a digestive biscuit? It's some sort of like
So it's
Filler?
literally just a circular biscuit, and most commonly drunk with tea. But I think the entire idea is that it is quite literally supposed to be quite palatably simpler for the
Easy to pass?
easy to pass. Maybe
Is it
I don't know
gluten-free?
I don't know about pass, but it's supposed to be easier on your.
Yeah, what's the gluten
intestines or something
content in
like that. I don't know.
So somebody thought that a good sales technique for this biscuit is it's really easy to eat.
The
mean,
fact that
like,
they name it
Keep
that.
in mind,
though.
you're selling this to Brits, not Americans. So that's
is it all
that's-
bread
that's a
easy to
difference.
eat?
I mean, isn't that
It's
like
not bread.
Well,
What is
okay,
it?
it's a biscuit. Isn't all biscuits
you dare stop
technically?
saying
You know
it's a
what a
sandwich, I
biscuit
swear to God.
is.
no? Is a biscuit a cookie?
Oh my god! No.
Is it sweet?
Okay. For American versus English viewers, biscuit is something completely different in America. For American
Right.
viewers, biscuit
We
is
put
a
gravy
cookie,
on
as
it.
you guys would put it.
No. A biscuit for us is like it's a
It's
puffed
like-
pastry that you put like
Right.
butter on it, or you put like jam on it, or you put gravy on it.
Yeah, it's not
It's
that.
like It's like a scone, except
Without the sugar.
less. Not even just without the sugar. It's also just like less thick in your mouth. You
Like
know?
a croissant?
Like it. No, a croissant. I'm
No.
trying to think of a good.
We need some density levels here.
Imagine a cookie, but more digestible.
Huh.
Sold. If you just told me it was digestible, I would have gone after it a long time ago.
Boy, these cookies really sit in my stomach all night. Is there any alternatives?
Mistakes were made.
Connor has a question for Bife. After all we've done, is our guardian the most powerful guardian there is?
Possibly. Like, it's hard to speculate on who the most powerful is because, like, there is no objective measure of power. Like, yes, we have the stat in game, but sometimes video game is just video game because video game. I love using phrases like that. Point being, like, I think there's a big case to be made for our guardian being one of the most powerful. Yeah, I don't know if you can put a finger on any one specific guardian. And I think that Bungie kind of intends for us to be special, but, you know, like, there's a bunch of other powerful characters that are interesting in their own right. So when you walk up to and speak to someone like, say, Lord Shaxx, they're still Lord Shaxx, right? They're still this badass Crucible Lord. When you walk up and talk to someone like, say, Cade Six, they're still this legendary gunslinger that's been going around the wilds for years and is now stuck in the tower or stuck in the ground.
Where do I
Yeah.
talk to Cade Six?
When was the last time
Like I said, stuck in the ground.
Zavala killed a god? Because for me, it was like Tuesday.
You make a relatively fair point. This is why our guardian's feeling special.
Last time I checked, Zavala was just questioning whether or not he should even leave the tower because he was really sad about losing Cade. And we're out there.
Last time I checked, Zavala was a big blue
Meanwhile,
bitch.
we're like, I'll be right back. I'm just grabbing myself some vengeance.
Zvala bitching around the tower.
He's out there, you know, kicking the can, crying in a corner. You know,
Yeah.
come
I
on.
think he's eating a
Like-
digestive biscuit or whatever. You know?
Yeah, he's sitting there eating cookies
Yeah,
and
yeah.
cream.
To give like a really simplified answer, there are lots of ways to be a powerful guardian. We've done a lot of those ways, I think is a very good way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
Zachary Morsehead says, is there any evidence in the lore that could possibly support the idea that perhaps one day, Jesus, this is a long question, a fallen or Elixni could even be ever be chosen as a guardian?
Interesting question. Okay, so from all the Elixni legends and from all the different like notices and references we get from the Fallen, it seems undeniable that they had the Traveler before us. They refer to it as the Great Machine. They chased it across space. They came here to this system following the Traveler, right? So they've had some kind of interactions with it before.
But that would be a
this-
golden age, right?
That would have been their golden age back then. And then, as they put it, the whirlwind, but realistically for us, it's the equivalent of their collapse, right? So they've interacted with the Traveler before. The real criteria for ghosts being released is that, or at least for ghosts choosing the Guardian, rather, is that they are, I think, amongst the worthy dead. That's, I think. Don't take my word as gospel. So, with undefined rules like that, there's a big question mark over the Elixni. What I can tell you about like the relationship between the Elixni and the city is that if you've read the Queensbreaker and Lord of Wolves lore
Yes,
tabs
this
on
is
those
cool.
exotics, there is a fallen called Mithrax the Forsaken, who we met in the Titan World Quest. And there is an alternative ending where if you don't attack Mithrax and instead kill the Hive Knight, you will be left peacefully by him and he will retreat without attacking you. And later in these lore tabs, that same Fallen is walking with a hunter and a warlock and declares that he will become a Kell of a house of individual Fallen that will choose to join him so they can fight alongside humanity.
Huh?
So
Mm.
this is a
Spiky
really
boys? Are they the spiky boys?
not the spiky boys, not the
Dang it.
hedgehog boys, but Fallen that would fight for us. Like people have wanted something like this for a very long time, I think.
Yes.
I know
Mhm.
I personally have.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of finally starting to become a thing.
It sets it up perfectly, right?
A true human Fallen alliance is starting to
That's
be
awesome.
I want
created.
to. I want
what I
to play as the arbiter. I mean,
And this guy has real
Right.
respect for humanity, right?
Mhm.
It's not like a uneasy trust or an uneasy bond. Like
Yeah.
he actually has real
It is
respect.
it is a genuine common ground, and like anything he's doing is made with a true spirit of alliance. Like this is not the kind of untrustworthy notion of like, should we really be kind of like trying to be Callus's shadow? No, this is a case of Mithrax is saying, I will dedicate the free-thinking Fallen to you. We will fight together. We will fight for the Great Machine.
That's cool.
If they could
That's really
easily
cool.
follow a storyline, in my opinion, that in Destiny 3 we have an option to build a fallen guardian.
Well, couldn't we? I mean, they could have a storyline of like the guardians that are fallen, or Lixney could have been from that system that they left to chase after the traveler, but instead those guardians might have stayed in that system instead because they were trying to.
But there's no evidence that they've ever had guardians,
right?
Is like their time with the traveler ended. Instead of the traveler getting damaged and staying in their solar system, the traveler just took the fuck off.
Right, but like Bife said, the criteria is that you were worthy dead.
And again, this is.
But if Mithrax forms this house,
I'm gonna shut that down real quick again. That is the best guess at a criteria.
Right.
Yeah.
Really,
but if Mithrax builds a house of fallen that are fighting alongside us, and some of them are gonna fall, like that sets up worthy dead for sure.
Mm-hmm. But again, like as I said, it's a potential criteria, the best guess at a criteria.
And so honestly, they can come up with any excuse they want if they want to have fallen guardians. They can just make that happen.
The traveler farted and was like,
"This is one of those moments where it's like it's really important." Because again, like what I gave you there is effectively headcanon, and it's my best guess.
Right.
So I don't want you guys to go ahead and take that as fact. Right. Like for all I know, it's.
Oh, I'm tweeting it out right now, Fife. It's all good.
But yeah, no, like for all I know, it could be like all guardians are left-handed, and that's the criteria, and that's why there aren't as many of them, right?
And there's also nothing that says that
right?
fallen cannot be guardians. There's nothing in the lore, right, with that, right?
There's nothing that indicates there has been a fallen guardian. Like,
true, yeah.
I'm not sure. I mean, like, here's the thing as well. Like, all the guardians we have at current have some kind of origin in humanity, right? Like, Exos have human consciousnesses, and they've just been planted into machines.
Couldn't that just be
were originally human?
That could be just because the circumstances we're in, though. It's like the traveler happens to be making guardians in a place where the humanity is being attacked. But if the fallen were dying alongside humanity, trying to be heroic and saving humanity, then you can easily see the fallen having heroic dead.
Entirely possible. Again, I leave that mystery up to the writers at Bungie because it's something I think they want to go ahead and define the rules for. You know,
it'd be cool to have a fallen guardian.
Something I will say is that like everyone at Bungie definitely listens to the sentiment of the community, and I think that personally, for me at least, like there's always this kind of really romantic idea about like retreading the steps of what Halo 2 did. So if you look back at Halo 2, the highlight for a lot of people is actually not the Master Chief side of the campaign, it's the Arbiters. Because you get to experience that other side of the story, that different culture. And so if Bungie thought like it was something they wanted to do, I think that would be a storyline that people might appreciate. But
the character creation screen wouldn't be exactly the same as it was in Destiny.
Ooh. Yeah. That's a bonus.
Like that's something
they could try.
You gotta remember, it's gonna be tough. Like, how do you add a fourth character? How do you do any of this stuff? Like, do you let people roll a fourth?
Yeah.
Like, do the Fallen have any kind of differences, considering that they are actually taller than human beings? Like, a Fallen captain is gonna be taller than your average human. Like, there's a lot of different kinks.
Are you gonna be Huff and Ether?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
If a guardian can dual wield, can I quad wield?
Right?
Can I summon a servitor?
Maybe you won't have 4 arms. You have them cut off.
If a guardian has a ghost, do fallen have
a shank?
What do
like
they have?
shank?
A shank.
I mean, we have the shank ghost.
We have the shank ghost. I mean, yeah.
Interesting.
It's like a mini shank that follows you around.
Dead Tom's Dead asked, "Hey, bye for DCP, longtime listener. To you all, appreciate all your work. If Talland is the white spark in the Ascendant challenges, then was he the same spark that guided us through the Taken King and baited blueberries into getting launched by the dick wall in King's Fall?"
I think that's what the implication might be. Like, it's never clearly been given that they were the same two sparks, but consider the fact that Toland is quite literally disembodied and floated in the Sea of Screams for God knows how long and has been in the Ascendant realm. Yeah, I mean, it is
He's a
entirely
troll.
possible that he was the same Spark, but also
You don't come out of that like without your noodle scrambled a little.
oh, dude, yeah, totally. Toland absolutely
Look at
has
Eris.
like a couple of screws
Yeah.
in
I mean,
interesting places. Let's put
for
it that
sure.
way. Like the other thing to note too is that Toland definitely watched our progress during King's Fall, and he's communed in some sense with Eris because there's a bunch of Grimoire cards where he does just that. He talks with us and with them, and in one of the cards in particular, it's literally right at the end of King's Fall, and he says, "Where are you going? Claim the power of the Taken King. You just killed him. What are you doing?" So, yeah, it kind of fits into everything quite perfectly because he even has lines back in the Sieur Ida Wish Ender mission and a few other places here and there where he's like, "Why would I possibly guide you? You basically like let this power go." So it's like small potential links there, but it seems really likely. Like I would not put it past the possibility whatsoever.
Toland wants us to be taken guardians. He wants us to grab the
Yeah,
power.
Toland wants us to follow the sword logic. He wants us to embrace the darkness for all it's
He does.
worth. 'Cause
Yeah,
he thinks
that's
that's
what I'm
the
getting
final
at.
rule of the universe.
I'm okay with this, we go down the route of, I'm
You
a
like
guardian
this.
that follows Toland's word.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to
This-
see, like, I know it's totally, like, opposite to what they generally do with gameplay choice, but I'd love to see them make us make a choice, right?
I would love
Between
that.
darkness and light. I think, personally, that'd be a really awesome thing to jump on and look at.
That would be super cool, right? Where it's a
And-
DLC or maybe it's the next game where you load it up and you have this whole scene, and right at the end it's choose. And you're like, what? That would be amazing.
Yep.
Mhm.
Miss Spider 42 says 41. Sorry, in Vanilla Destiny 2, everything seemed to establish that our guardian was the only guardian to be led to the Shard of the Traveler. Now we see other guardians with light running around: EDZ, Titan, Io, and Nessus. Is there a lore explanation for this, or just game mechanics? Isn't when the shield around the Traveler disbanded,
Yeah, when the
everybody gets their
Traveler
light
is
back?
caged. Yeah. So, in terms of the actual pure campaign and that opening session, the best explanation you can give every single time is always going to be just because video game. And, like, sometimes you just have to suspend your disbelief that you're not the only one, and you're just going to accept that maybe when you're out there in the open world, there are other Guardians roaming around, they are using supers and whatnot. And realistically, you accept that it is just your story for the time being. Like, when it comes to finally beating Gaul and ending the Red War, like, yeah, everyone gets their supers back, so the world makes a lot more sense. But in the original, like, iteration of the Red War campaign, no. When you ran through your first time, treat it almost as though you were the only Guardian in the world. Like, if there was a way to run those instances completely solo, even with full open worlds being solo, I think Bungie might have tried to do that. But by that same token, Destiny is meant to be an online shared experience. So yeah, you can't just suspend the open world for God knows how long. Like, part of the world's interactivity has got to still be there.
Mm-hmm.
Because video game.
Video
That's my
game.
favorite phrase.
Hmm.
Can I put it on a shirt?
Luke Marshall asks, "What do you think of being able to kill Riven in one phase without doing any of the mechanics?"
Yeah.
What do you guys think on that one?
There was
I
a
know-
question about whether or not it was. I heard a couple people talking about it, like just bringing up, is it a cheese? Is it not? I don't know if I'm going to wade into
I
that
don't know if
water.
it's a cheese.
I wouldn't call
I
it a
don't-
cheese because you're
yeah.
not doing anything besides just shooting her with a specific type of weapon.
So,
Right.
so there's two main classifications that people talk about. There's exploits and cheeses, right?
Mhm.
Exploits are when you're taking advantage of a mechanic like pulling the cord or things like that, right? Pushing Atheon off the a cliff. That's an exploit.
Something
I would call
unintended.
that a cheese.
No, those are unintended. Those are
I
game breaking
agree.
mechanics that are used to exploit the game's poor design or like
I would
the
say more
gaps
like
in.
the Wardcliff coil thing where you could get ammo back. That's an exploit because you're not cheesing the game by doing anything externally. You're using something that is within the game.
So
Yeah.
so cheeses are within the game, and like
Yeah.
the sword bridge, where you could climb up top and shoot and
Kill the
bypass.
oracles, right?
right. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I don't know. I personally would not do it. I just don't think it's fun. I think it's missing the whole point of the raid.
I think it's
But it-
tremendously fun.
Yeah.
to like just blow her ass up with rocket launchers, I think is It's hilarious. Do I want to do it that
But
way
I
every
like shooting
time?
the pimples.
One time is going to be fun. We're going to be
Yeah.
like, oh my God, that was so fast.
Sure,
Let's go get our
sure.
loot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I think that I don't think it's a cheese, to be honest. And the reason I say that is because you're not at all exploiting anything other than the game's natural mechanics.
Sure.
And the only
Yeah.
thing that's really being influenced there is your delta, your light level, how powerful you are. And the fact that people have figured out the way to do this is really interesting, because I really don't believe that Bungie ever designed it with like all 6 people like camping in one room and just DPSing there instantly was ever like a design choice. But it is a really interesting method, and I don't think it constitutes a cheese. Like pulling the cord on Crota would have been a cheese. Like making
No,
it
that's
so
an
that-
exploit. That's
I mean, this is
It's-
this is
Mm,
your
You're
definitely
using
definition of
something
right?
external. I would
Again,
say
like,
it's a cheat.
it really does depend, because there's no accurate single definition of a cheat.
Sure.
Right.
Like, I would agree with what Watt said regarding like Wardcliff. I'd call that an exploit. I'd say that
Yeah.
if you were, for example, like, throwing the Atheon off the side or throwing the Templar off, I call that a cheese. Like, cheese to me is just a way of making things easier that doesn't strictly align purely with like killing them in a contemporary manner. Whereas in this one, you're meant to do DPS at this phase anyway. You're just doing a lot more of it.
Yeah,
So
you're
it's-
doing more than
You know,
They thought
you're
we
not
would.
you're not
Yeah.
letting gravity kill the boss. You're not disengaging from the fight altogether. You're just piling everything into one moment.
Yeah.
So I totally get why people
I've-
call it cheese.
I'm in that camp out also. Like, it's the sandbox, and they set it up in a way where you can damage Riven at multiple points. And the fact that we discovered a way as a community to just blitz the damage as fast as possible with an archetype of weapons that essentially doesn't get used that often anymore, I think is actually really cool and really fun.
Right?
You know, it's like,
And they didn't, it's not like they locked, as soon as 3 people go in the room, the door's locked and no more people can enter. They allow 6 people to go in the room. They allow you to equip a rocket launcher.
exactly.
It's you're not doing, and you're not even exploiting the game.
Yeah,
You're not doing, you're literally just going into one room together and using
they give you
a
all these
weapon.
options in the sandbox in the encounter to experiment, and the experimentation has led to a quick blitz of damage, which is fun to do. Is it fun to do all the time? No, because you're bypassing a bunch of mechanics.
Is it
The
even
problem-
practical to do all
The
the
problem
time?
that I have is that, just philosophically, that's all, is that you're at a point where a ton of people are never going to have ever done that raid and experience the encounter the way it was designed.
Oh, they can always fix it. They can always, for a long time, nobody got through past Atheon without cheesing them off because you couldn't get a fire
Yeah.
team that wouldn't do it, or you'd be standing on the ledge with icebreakers shooting down at the gatekeeper.
Mhm.
They could fix it.
See, on this instance, I'd
Well,
say
I think they're gonna fix
yes
it.
and
I don't
no.
think it's intended.
Like, here's the
Clearly,
thing
it's
with
not.
like,
I don't know why we're arguing. We're on the same page.
I don't
Here's
think
the
we're
thing with
arguing.
that, though. I think that it's likely that you will see people who are going to do it legit still. And I did this with my team the other day because the question came along being like, are we going to do the rocket strategy? And I said no, because there are some people who it's their first time going through and they're not high enough light level.
Yeah.
That was the pure criteria. And so for a lot of people who go in their 370s or 360s, unless you have like a full team of 600 supporting that one 560, oh, yeah. What numbers did I say? Wow, I'm sorry, it's late here. Yeah, unless you have a full team of 600 supporting like a 560 or a 550, then you're not going to be able to do that strategy. But if you go in with that team of general 560s, they're trying the raid for the first time, they are going to look for a legitimate way to do it because that's the only way they can. Like, you
Yeah.
need to 2-cycle Riven in order to get the kill. Having said that, I feel like it's a problem for way further down the road, and that's where you're totally right, Pope, because by the time that more people have gotten to 580 without doing the raid, and, just by leveling in a much more passive way, they're going to get at that stage. It's like, okay, I want to try the raid, and this might then be a more prevalent option for them.
Mhm.
So, is it a problem? Maybe down
Yeah,
the road.
you go and you find an LFG group, and you're not going to get somebody that's going to say, "Hey, let's do the encounter the harder way."
Back in the Crota days, when I did a lot of LFGing, I would specifically, if I created my own LFG post, I would say
Sure.
no cheese.
Right,
Like,
that's true.
Right in the thing, and a lot of people were looking for straight runs, right? Is they didn't want to
Yeah.
use disconnects. They didn't want to. There was a ton of cheeses in Crota. Actually, there was
My
like
lord.
Yeah, the
That
sword
raid.
breach was one I remember running into just absolute ton of people who had never ever done the sword bridge.
No, they didn't know how.
Properly.
And
They
when
didn't know
we
how.
got
Most people didn't know how to do it.
when
Legit.
we got to like the second version of that,
Yeah.
like nobody knew how. It's
Nobody
so
knew.
funny.
No one
Have you
knew.
ever done Crota before? Oh yeah, everybody's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And we get to the sword, and everybody's running around like, guys, you guys stand on the fucking plate.
Literally the number one thing we always say back in the WTF like raids when we did like the D1 raidathons where we did all 4 of the raids back to back was, have you done Crota? Yes. Have you done Crota the legit way though? Silence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was always the thing. We'd have to teach them about the Annihilator totems. We'd have to
Or
show them.
you know
Yeah.
how many people?
Pope Bear, you did the raid. You did Riven for the first week, right?
Yeah, I did it on
What'd
Saturday.
you think?
My
congrats, by the
God,
way.
man! Like, so I did it with the WTF guys and Nava Bear. They're really good guys to play with because they teach you how to do the raid and they don't just carry you along. So I got a chance to really engage in the encounters and do and help and do stuff. I was blown away by the scope of it, the adventure that I felt like I was on, the epicness of the set pieces. I felt at the same time, overwhelmed by the space that I was in, but then laser focused on the task at hand that was in front of me and possible. The communication was on a god tier level. You had to be able to listen, engage, articulate, understand. It was all these things that I feel like I really loved about Vault of Glass, and then some. So for me personally, it elevated to the highest like expectation or of what I feel like the best raid in Destiny is definitely this one. And it's just one run, and I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna do it again on Saturday.
You got a favorite part? What was your favorite section?
So Ribbon Fight was definitely fun. It's a lot going on, so I'm gonna want to like go back at it, and before I can really, I feel like I was the most confused during the Ribbon Fight. Like,
Natural.
I just
Understandable.
there's a lot of stuff, and I really couldn't digest it. So maybe that one's gonna rise up later, but the mechanism, the lock,
The vault.
the vault for me was my favorite. It was fun to engage with your teammates and to run in and out and have different jobs, and I was I had a lot of fun understanding and learning that. That was cool. That was
Did
cool
you
to me.
listen to the music in the final round of?
Oh,
Oh, that's
So
epic.
good.
Everything
epic,
is
dude.
so well done in that raid, and I guess I wish I would have been able to do it before we had it. Like, I wish I would have been able to play it and then had the Bungie guys on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
I really would. I mean, I play with them, so I know the guys. So I'm gonna get a chance to say thank you. But I really felt compelled after that raid to just jump on Twitter and go, "Thank you."
Mhm.
Fuck, that
It
was
is.
so
It's a really hot raid.
Yeah.
It's good.
good.
It's
Yeah.
good. It's an experience, right? It's
Mhm.
I keep saying that the Watchtower is like my favorite track in all of Destiny now. And it's not just because of the track, it's because of you're on that final round. You're on the final part of clearing the vault. Maybe you've been there for hours and the music starts kicking in, it's getting more epic, and everything's
Mhm.
telling you that you are right on the brink of cracking this thing. And just
Mhm.
that gaming experience has been my favorite
Yeah.
in Destiny.
Yeah.
It
You
was
know,
insane.
Yeah.
I had amazing experience from going into it at 550.
It's
and
really cool to go
leaving
in lower.
at 565.
Yeah.
I was at 541, and I would disagree wholeheartedly. I would have much rather gone in at 550.
That is a really hard fight when you're low level.
Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah.
I could not imagine doing it at the light level you guys were at, because holy.
But
crap.
I love that experience they nailed in the raid too. When you go in and you're such a lower level and you feel that fight, and then you go in now and it's like, I feel powerful.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
they nailed that experience.
Absolutely.
It's still
Okay.
fun too. It's like, you talk about cheese and Riven, but like right away, we knew that we were going to not cheese, but we were going to be able to one phase that ogre boss. And you can do it like the next week we went in. You could basically one phase that ogre boss.
Shotguns, man.
And it's still fun, you know.
EP
Shotgun strat.
Yeah, it's and but I guess honestly, like what was most blown away by, and I wanted to spend time is just looking at the set pieces that you find the bosses in.
Some of them, even where there's no enemies at all, you're just like literally traveling through, are just absolutely beautiful.
Yep.
I mean, even Riven herself is a set piece.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
She is a massive effing dragon. Like
when I first fell down there, it's just like, this is scary.
Yeah.
And she's screaming and all this. It was scary.
What's the boss that you basically chase around the area and you like kind of climb the tower as you're going?
Shirochi.
Oh my god, I love that boss.
That's
It's one of my
such a
favorite
fun
bosses of all
encounter.
time. Like you're doing puzzles, you're like doing DPS. There's so many phases to it.
Yep.
But meanwhile, there's this urgency all the time. You just got to keep
time
moving,
of it,
keep
yeah.
moving.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that boss fight. I think it's one of the best they've ever done.
So I gotta say this too, like considering the emotional weight behind the idea that this is the last Ahamkara and that we're finishing a deed that Guardians started years ago, and consider that the entire encounter shifts towards this epic final stand, it gets me every time when I go through Riven and get that final kill. Like, man, there is just so much they did right with this. Like, from the music when you hit Ascendant Realm changing subtly to when you're finally getting through all of the DPS checks and it's time to hit those last set of eyes. Like, every moment of this raid just feels so jam-packed with just the right amount of action. Like, man, it's so good.
Yeah.
Like, I want to go
It's so
back and
good.
finish it again now. Like, I cannot get it out of my head. Like, it's too good.
Yeah, it's great.
It's good stuff, man. And I really, in the end, I want other people to have that same experience. I get a chance to play with somebody who hasn't done the raid yet, and will be doing it for the first time on Saturday with me and the WTF guys. And I'm excited to hear and to see them, ask the similar questions that I was asking, and work their way, through the fight. And I don't know, they just did it. Just bravo, they just did a good job, and it makes me super excited for the if this is the type of content that that they believe they can create. I'm hooked on this stuff now. I mean, it's just for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I gotta say this too, man. Like, this is the first proper full raid where we've had like a story that's linked in from the campaign that then also has like real characters that we then get to explore with later in the expansion. Like, this feels like what a raid should be narratively, like
100%.
even down to the point where when Redeem got their world's first completion, the world itself changed because they unleashed Riven's curse. Like,
Epic.
that was literally perfect. Like, this is what raids should be.
Yeah,
It is
Absolutely.
absolutely fantastic. I cannot
It definitely
I
set a high
cheer.
bar.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Cannot wait.
How are we doing on time? Can we do a couple silly questions?
Let's do, 2 silly
Couple
questions.
sillies.
There should be good.
2? Oh my god, that's high
Too
pressure.
silly.
All right, most interesting Korean says, which horror film character would you want to bring to Destiny? He gives a list, so you got to choose from the list.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Jason, Chucky, It, Leatherface, and Freddy Krueger. I think the clear answer is Chucky, right? A replacement for Cade as Vanguard.
Is Chucky?
He likes knives.
I can just
Does like
imagine
knives.
Bala picking Chucky up and saying, "Have at them, Chucky," and then like just throwing it at the dude.
He's actually a grenade that you get.
I feel like Zavala could become
It makes
Pinhead.
so much sense, too.
Chucky, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna Chucky him.
I'm gonna
Chucky.
chuck Chucky. But when are you gonna chuck Chucky? You're gonna
He's
chuck
the new
Chucky at.
super-
New exotic of the Chucky.
How many Chuckies can you
The
chuck?
Chucky.
Chuckies.
I like that.
I think it personally though.
It
Yeah.
would be
15
awesome.
Demon, oof, that's
I would just kind of
Imagine-
like chilling somewhere in patrol during the
Yeah.
Halloween event.
No.
God.
What if he's the new Zer, where he's like, I've got
Oh, there you
forsaken
go.
exotics.
He hangs out in
Got
sewers and
exotics.
says, I've got exotics. Come here.
Honestly, I feel like it's going to be some Dead Orbit supporter like hanging next to a rock, looking all itish.
No,
With all
man.
makeup on, looking all goth.
This is pressure for Briar. He's looking for the
Yeah, I
perfect
know.
final
He
question.
is.
All right, Sarah Tar says, since it's officially fall, pumpkin or apple flavored scented things? What side do you guys land on? Apple or pumpkin for fall?
Apple. The I used to be pumpkin until Starbucks started pushing out this pumpkin spice latte crap.
Just
and
don't
I'm
go
like,
to Starbucks. Maybe
but
that's-
everybody has it, and you smell it, and it's just.
I don't go
ugh.
outside personally,
like
so I
20
don't have
years
that
ago.
problem.
Yo, I think pumpkin spice is delicious.
You animal.
I love
In
it. I love it. We
support-
got pumpkin spice coffee right now. I fucking love it.
In support of my
That's
Titan
disgusting.
from the War Mind, I'm going with pumpkin.
The pumpkin.
The
Yeah.
Ah,
pumpkin.
there it is. Pumpkin pie,
I'm
pumpkin
going with
spice.
pumpkin.
I'm going with
Yeah.
Pope on this one. I think it's got to be apples. Apples, man.
Give me a delicious apple pie over a pumpkin pie any day.
Oh, I'll take the apple
Nice.
pie over the pumpkin pie, but my pie intake is a lot lower than my coffee intake, like by an order of magnitude.
Okay, Briar, you can I judge people when they give me if you go over to someone's house and they give you
Yeah.
a cup of scented a flavored coffee, I'm judging. I'm judging.
But what
can't-
if it's fall and it's pumpkin?
That's great. Pope, that works out perfectly because if you come over to my house and judge me, I don't give a shit. So we're good. We're all set.
I figures you'd be a freaking flavored coffee drinker.
Oh man, I love pumpkin spice latte. Oh yeah.
Mm.
Put a little cinnamon on top of that bitch. There we go. Now we're talking.
Yeah.
Behind the beard, Briar truly is an inner white girl.
Oh, I love it when I get caught in the mustache and I get to lick it off later. Oh,
so sorry.
Do you expect to
Nice.
see some nice looking ladies at Starbucks? You just find Briar.
are you saying I'm not a nice looking lady?
You've seen this
Take
man's
great
beard.
offense to that.
Glorious.
Briar
Probably,
equals
that's
a
probably the
beard.
reason he has the beard is the pumpkin spice lattes, man.
Yeah, I gets to save it for later.
That's amazing.
I don't know.
Is that the episode? Is
That's
that the
it.
show?
I think
That's
so.
the episode.
I think it is. All right.
This was great.
If you want to find more of me, I'm Tefty Teft. You can talk to me at Teft on Twitter and catch my streams twitch.tv/Tefty Teft.
I'm Briar Rabbit. You can talk to me on Twitter at the Briar Rabbit or check out the streams weekday afternoons at 1 p.m. Eastern. This week we've been playing a lot of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Loving that game. So far, I've hung off of Zeus's nuts and kicked dudes off of cliffs. It's been hilarious. It is an amazing game. Come check it out.
Sounds,
It's actually really
like
fun.
a good time.
It is a good time.
And if you were hanging off his nuts, is he well hung?
That's up to him to decide.
And I am Miss 5000 Watts. You can find me on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Just look for Miss 5000 Watts. Bye.
By Furon.
Oh, no Pope.
You're up.
Nope.
Okay.
It's you.
And yeah, my name is Bife. You can find me on YouTube and Twitter. I do a lot of stuff on both, but also I'll occasionally appear on Twitch. Not on my own channel for the most part, because I'm kind of giving streaming a bit of a rest. But yeah, on wonderful podcasts like DCP, or occasionally I'll be playing with other community members. So yeah, that's a thing. Do you mind if I give one extra little
Not at all,
plug here?
man. Go for it.
Go for
I'm
it.
not.
Which is, yeah, soon I'm going to be jumping into the raid again and giving like a full in-depth breakdown of the lore
I've heard
behind
about
the
this.
raid. as
Oh,
it
cool.
seems.
When's that happening?
I'm going to try and get that done by the beginning of next week or this weekend.
Is
It's
this a
very-
YouTube video or a Twitch stream?
A big YouTube video.
Okay,
Like, I've already
cool.
done a nice raid along with Gigs and Co. So his fire team on T1, we just ran through that, but I want to do something which is a lot more narrative. I want to harken back to the videos that I did for things like the Vault of Glass and Crota's End, and I
Mhm.
really want to give people a sense of like what the raid really means and to give them a better understanding of it. So yeah,
That sounds
that's
amazing.
something I really want to do soon. But yeah, thank you so much for also
I'm
having
excited.
me, guys.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to be on
Thank
the
you
Thanks
show.
for
so
coming
much
on.
for being on. This was
Thank
a
you.
pleasure.
And this has been Pope Bear. You can find me on Twitter at Pope Bear. Make sure to follow the DCP channel at DCP_live. We wanted to thank Bife for coming on the show. It's always great to have a lore master on. There is so much story to go. Make sure to check out his channel. It's just it's a rabbit hole though. So if you think you're just gonna watch like one video,
Mhm.
You're gonna be like, I
find
gotta find out
yourself
about
like
this character that
3
he's
hours later.
I gotta go on
Deep
this
dive,
next
man.
one.
You
deep dive.
haven't eaten. You know your family's mad at you. You're like, stop watching Bife.
It honestly deepens my enjoyment of the game while I'm playing it. Though.
Absolutely,
Just
Yeah.
having to understand. And I did not go into the grimoire at all. It wasn't until you guys started doing it, by doing the lore master stuff, making these videos, and I started understanding and hearing these stories that it really did deepen my enjoyment of the game.
It means the world to hear you and so many others say that. Like, seriously.
We got a lot more to come. We've got a great show planned. If you guys take a look at our roadmap, we have some awesome guests coming up. It's I'm excited to have Dylan from Bungie on the show. He's coming up on the 18th. Next week we have Chevy. He's a Redeem member and world's first title holder, so he'll be on next week.
He also was the first to solo Argos. Argos.
Yes, he is a talented PvE player. I'm really excited to hear from him.
He soloed Argos?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh my
Yes.
god. Does he have a
That is
video up? I
indeed
gotta watch that.
He has a video up. He is
has a video
it's a
up.
phenomenal
Mhm.
effort.
He's amazing.
We've got so I said Dylan, Bungie's community manager, really excited about that. We have Aztec Cross, a very funny YouTuber, and excited to have him on. We have Luminosity to kick off November, T-Rex and Destin from IGN also in November, and we're gonna finish up with we've got Laced Up Lauren and just some really
This
cool
is a hell
people.
of a fucking guest list, man. I'm excited
Yeah,
for
right?
this.
I know. Can I just sit and watch? Do I have to talk?
Now and I've
listen.
invited like
Get
we
some
have
popcorn.
Carolina,
Yeah,
Carolina
let's get
Gamer
popcorn.
coming on at in late November. We have there's an author from Polygon that he's going to be stopping by. He follows and writes for Polygon Destiny content. We have just some really cool people from the Destiny community and just outside of it that are now involved with Destiny because of how good it's gotten. So definitely excited to, and some of your favorites. So not to go too far into it, but I'm really excited for what this winter
It's looking good.
has to offer. Yeah.
Looking really
Real
good.
good.
Yeah.
All right, guys. That has been episode 105 of DCP. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. We're going to roll credits, and then we'll be back to read out some live subs. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.